Alright, so I'll be real with you right away. I used to think all those stories about the deep web and dark web were just urban legends wrapped in Reddit threads and horror podcasts. You know the kind, my friend's cousin's roommate saw something insane on a secret site type of stuff. I always rolled my eyes at it. That changed when one of my closest friends, Danny, told me she had actually been on there and seen stuff she wished she could forget. She was 28 at the time, and not someone who spooked easily. She described some of what she found, weird, creepy sites and disturbing forums. But there were other things she flat out refused to talk about. Said it wasn't just disturbing, it was dangerous. Honestly, I should have just taken her word for it. But I guess my curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to prove to myself that it was all exaggerated, just internet folklore. So I downloaded the Tor browser one night when I couldn't sleep and poked around the hidden wiki. I'd heard people warn that even just clicking random links could land you in serious trouble. Scams, viruses, way worse. And yeah, some of the links I clicked were sketchy, but mostly just dull. Adult classifieds, people advertising escorts, questionable pharmacies, black market stuff that honestly felt more like clickbait than real danger. It felt low effort and sort of lame. I was actually disappointed. But then I stumbled across something called The Night Watchman. The name stood out, felt ominous but vague. I thought maybe it was a creepypasta archive or someone live streaming night walks in eerie neighborhoods. Seemed harmless enough. I clicked it. The page that loaded was just black, no logo, nothing. Dead silent. Then 3 embedded videos appeared, stretched out horizontally across the screen. All were paused. Each showed a different person, or group, on the thumbnail. The first had a family of 4, a mom and dad, 2 daughters who looked about 5 and 8, give or take. They were all sitting on a couch, smiling like they were posing for a Christmas card. The second showed a couple. The woman was very visibly pregnant, cradling her belly while leaning into the guy beside her. They looked happy. Nervous, but happy. The third was just a solo woman, probably mid-30s, sitting on the floor of her living room next to a black lab with this odd white patch over one eye. They looked cozy. Before I could even think about what the videos were, this voice cut in, male, but weirdly garbled, like it had been passed through a dozen filters. Couldn't place an accent or age. He spoke slowly, deliberately. Good evening. Tonight, the Night Watchmen bring you 3 unique households, each with their own routines, dreams, and beliefs. Then he paused. I swear I could hear him smirking when he continued. Watch each video, and then choose one. That was it. No explanation, no instructions, just that. At this point, I wasn't sure what I'd gotten into, but my interest was fully locked in. I hovered for a second, then clicked on the first video. It played like some weirdly edited home movie. The family doing normal stuff, watching cartoons in the living room, kids chasing each other in the yard, eating spaghetti around a cluttered dining table. Then the parents tucked the girls into bed and kissed them goodnight. It ended right after that. It felt wrong. Like I was watching footage I was never supposed to see. There was no camera shake, no commentary, no visible source. Just clean, silent clips strung together. It creeped me out, but I clicked the second one anyway. That one showed the couple. Young, probably late 20s. They were putting together furniture in the nursery, making dumb jokes, holding up tiny onesies and laughing. Later, they ate dinner, kale and something else I couldn't identify, and flipped through parenting books together. Then they curled up on the couch, eventually heading off to bed, arms wrapped around each other. It was sweet. Honestly sweet. I smiled without meaning to. But again, I felt like I was trespassing in the most intimate parts of someone's life. At that point, I figured I might as well see the last one. The third video opened on the woman and her dog, just the two of them. She honestly reminded me of some of my old roommates, the kind who always mean to clean but somehow never quite get around to it. Her apartment was cluttered in a very I live alone and don't care who sees this kind of way. There were dirty dishes stacked in the sink and on the counter, a mountain of unfolded laundry draped over the love seat, and her trash can was so full the lid couldn't even close. The other two households had been relatively neat. The family had toys scattered around and a couple of mismatched socks in the hallway, but nothing wild. The couple's place was practically spotless, like one of those homes you see in Airbnb listings that makes you feel like your own place is a garbage fire. But this woman? She seemed lonely. Not in a dramatic movie way, but in the quiet, everyday kind that sneaks up on you. Most of the video was just her flipping through channels, eating straight from a half-melted tub of cookies and cream ice cream, and checking her phone over and over like she was hoping someone would text. At one point, she tossed a ball across the room for her dog, who was clearly the best part of her day, then fed him, scrolled her phone one last time, and headed to bed, still clutching it like it was her last link to the outside world. And then, the screen shifted again. The same 3 paused images came back. The voice returned, distorted but somehow smug this time. "Now that you have seen," it said, "which one will you choose?" I froze. For a second, I convinced myself it was just a messed up social experiment or some sort of creepy art project. I waited, hoping maybe there were other people watching who'd make the choice, but no one else did. After a long, sick silence, the 3 original videos vanished and were instantly replaced. These new videos felt different. Wrong. They were all live feeds now, and each one showed a figure, tall, broad, unsettlingly still. I couldn't make out their faces, just that they were huge, all dressed the same. Black shirts, black pants, heavy boots, and these long trench coats that flared slightly at their ankles, like a horror movie version of a Western gang. Each wore a wide-brimmed black hat that shadowed their faces. "Have you decided?" the voice asked again. "Which one will you choose?" I didn't respond. I couldn't. The next words hit like a gut punch. "Death comes on swift wings for our ill-fated friends. You must choose one. This is how the game goes." Game? Was this really happening? My hands hovered over my keyboard. I was ready to just exit the whole thing, clear the browser, delete the files, maybe even toss my laptop out the window. I reached to close it, but the voice calmly continued before I could even touch the screen. "Before you close us down, you should know that if you do not choose one of the 3 shown here, your family will be next." That made me pause. I laughed nervously at first. It had to be a bluff, right? Just a scare tactic. Mess with the viewer, get them paranoid. And then it said my name. "Lena," it whispered, way too soft. "Lena, dear sweet Lena." I stopped breathing. It knew my name. Not just my name, but how I went by it. Not my full name. Not the name listed on any forums. Just Lena. That's when the full panic kicked in. My chest felt tight. My palms were sweating. I didn't know what kind of sick joke this was, or if it was a joke at all anymore. "I know it's a difficult choice," the voice said again, almost gently this time. "But it must be made. Please, direct the night watchmen to their chore." The screen flickered, and the original 3 clips came back. The family, the couple, the woman and her dog. And now I realized they weren't just being watched. One of them was going to die, and I was supposed to choose. I tried to logic it out, like that would make it any less horrible. Maybe this was just an elaborate trick, a horror-themed site trying to fake people out. But the fear in my body wasn't fake. My heart felt like it was going to punch through my ribs. The family? 2 little girls. No way I could do that. I wouldn't even consider it. The expecting couple? They were about to start a life. It felt evil, even letting my mind wander that direction. That left the woman. The one who lived alone. Who ate ice cream for dinner, and whose only real companion seemed to be her dog. She had no kids, no partner. Her place was a mess, yeah. But she didn't seem like a bad person. Just sad. And I hated myself for thinking it. But she did have the least to lose. The voice snapped again, this time louder and meaner. Choose. I flinched so hard I nearly knocked over my drink. I stared at the 3 images again, and I hated everything about what I was about to do. Then I clicked. I chose the woman. Very well. So it shall be, the voice said again, now back to that unsettling calm it had at the start. No distortion spikes, no edge, just cool, quiet authority. The night watchman feeds came back up on screen, each figure standing stock still in front of the homes. The night watchman, the voice continued. The choice has been made. You may proceed with your task. I stared, wide-eyed, as 2 of the dark-coated men stepped toward the homes on their respective screens. But the third one, the one posted in front of the lonely woman's apartment, turned the opposite way and calmly walked off into the darkness. His feed went static, then black. What? I literally said out loud, Wait, no, I chose her. What's happening? But the video feed shifted, and the remaining 2 screens suddenly filled my monitor, enlarging automatically. My heart was pounding like it was trying to escape my chest. The only words I could say, over and over, were, "What's going on?" I watched helplessly as the 2 remaining watchmen approached the houses. They didn't break in so much as move through them, like locks didn't matter. Doors gave way with barely a sound. The camera feeds followed them closely, almost like they were being filmed by invisible drones gliding silently behind them. The one entering the young couple's home crept through the hallway, glancing into the nursery. He didn't go in, though. He just paused and stared, as if admiring their effort. Then he turned and crossed the hall, heading toward the main bedroom. The other watchman moved down a hallway lined with family photos and children's drawings taped to the walls. He slowed, paused between 2 doorways, and eventually turned into the kids' room. I don't know how I kept watching. I should have looked away. I should have pulled the plug right then. But I froze. The man by the couple's bed stood still for a beat, towering at the edge of their mattress, a giant blade clenched in one gloved hand. It looked like a machete, but larger, broader, heavier, something meant to do damage fast. And then he stepped forward, calm as anything, and started swinging. The screams were so loud I swear my ears rang. It didn't sound fake. There was no cheesy sound effect or background music, just raw, primal terror. I whipped my head toward the other screen. The second watchman was now at the center of the kids' bedroom. The pink bunk bed was barely lit by a small nightlight. He reached back with the machete, his body casting a massive shadow against the wall. My throat clenched and I screamed, just this awful, panicked sound I didn't even know I could make. That's when I yanked the power cord out of my laptop. Not a soft shutdown. Not an, "Are you sure you want to exit?" Just black screen. Silence. No hum. No distorted voice. Nothing. I was shaking. My whole body felt frozen and boiling at the same time. I couldn't stop thinking. What had I just done? What was that? Was it real? Was any of it real? But it felt real. Too real. My lips were dry. My tongue felt like sandpaper. I just sat there on the floor in front of my dead laptop, trying not to pass out or throw up. I didn't even notice the sun coming up outside. Hours passed before I dared plug the computer back in. I didn't want to, believe me. But part of me needed to know if it was still there. If the site still existed. If the night watchmen were still watching me. When I finally powered the laptop back up, everything was normal. No strange apps, no locked screens, no haunted bookmarks. Nothing. I tried to move on. Tried to tell myself it was some sick ARG or twisted prank site. But then, a few days later, I opened my email, and that's when I saw it. Subject line: a gift from the night watchman. I stared at it for a long time before I clicked. I should have just deleted it, blocked the sender, tossed the whole laptop out the window. But I didn't. I opened it. I think I needed to believe it was all fake, that this would be the punchline. But it wasn't. The email body was just a blank white screen, except for one sentence in giant, bold, black font. Jenna thanks you for sparing her from the night watchman's hand. Underneath that, another line appeared. We appreciate your decision, Lena. We look forward to your next visit. Come play again anytime. My mouth dropped open when I saw the attachment. It was a photo, taken in daylight. It showed the same woman, Jenna, walking her dog through a park trail, still looking down at her phone like nothing had happened, like she had no idea how close she'd come. I closed my laptop and locked it in a drawer. I will never go near the deep web again. Back when I was around 17 and still in high school, I went through this big phase where I was super into tech stuff. Coding, cracking random software, just messing with things most kids didn't bother with. I wasn't doing anything illegal, at least not on purpose. I just liked seeing how stuff worked. One afternoon, I stumbled onto this sketchy forum while trying to figure out how to spoof my IP address. Don't ask why. I thought I was cooler than I was. And someone posted a thread about getting onto the dark web. I'd vaguely heard about it before, but I didn't really understand what it actually was. Curiosity got the better of me, so I followed the steps they laid out, downloaded the Tor browser, and hopped on. It was underwhelming. Not nearly as wild as I expected. I clicked around a few directories, saw a bunch of weird site listings, mostly forums, sketchy service offers, and random stuff for sale, but nothing that held my attention for more than a second. I was basically just snooping without any real purpose. Then about 30 minutes in, my screen went nuts. Like, full-on chaos. Dozens of pop-ups started exploding all over my desktop, warning me that I downloaded some crazy virus. Total panic mode. I slammed my laptop shut, heart pounding. After a few minutes of pacing around like a dumbass, I opened it again, closed Tor, deleted the whole thing, and scrubbed everything I could find related to it off my hard drive. Thought I was in the clear. But later that night, while I was watching Netflix in bed, I noticed this tiny white light on near the top of my screen, the one right next to the webcam. It was on. And I mean, barely noticeable, like the kind of thing you'd never catch unless the room was dark. I had no clue how long it had been lit up, but something about it made my stomach drop. I immediately thought back to my little trip into the dark web and freaked out. First thing I did was grab a sticky note, rip off a piece and slap it over the camera. Super high-tech fix, I know. Then I went digging through my system settings trying to turn the webcam off manually. I disabled it from the device manager, checked for rogue programs, even ran 3 different antivirus programs back to back, but nothing seemed to stop that little light. Eventually, after stressing myself out for days and trying every YouTube fix I could find, I gave up and just did a full wipe of my PC. Factory reset. Nuked the whole thing. I figured whatever sketchy code had slipped in while I was messing around with Tor would get wiped out completely. And for a minute, it looked like it worked. The webcam light finally shut off. I actually let myself relax for once. Thought the worst was behind me. A few days go by and then boom. Out of nowhere, I get a text from this random number I don't recognize. There's no message, just 5 pictures. And when I opened them, my stomach legit dropped. Every single one was a photo of me sitting in front of my laptop, clearly taken through the webcam. I was in my room, doing nothing interesting, just browsing or watching something. But here's the part that chilled me. One of the pictures was from after I reset the computer. I could tell because I'd gotten a haircut the next day, and in that photo my hair was freshly buzzed. That meant they still had access. I slapped another piece of tape over the camera, a different color this time because yes, I weirdly remember that detail, and just sat there, frozen. If they were still watching me, they could probably hear me too, right? Like, if they had camera access, wouldn't they have mic access as well? Were they listening to my convos, watching me type passwords, grabbing my info? My brain went full paranoia mode. I couldn't stop thinking about it. What if they were already digging through my bank stuff or pretending to be me somewhere? After hours of spiraling, I finally cracked. I went into the kitchen, grabbed a tall glass, filled it with water, and straight up drowned my laptop. Watched the screen flicker and die. Left it sitting there on the floor like a crime scene. I told my parents it slipped off my desk while I was cleaning. Not my most convincing lie. And thankfully they didn't ask too many questions. They actually helped me replace it, which I still feel a little guilty about. For months, everything was fine. No weird lights, no mystery texts. I almost convinced myself the nightmare was over. But then, about 6 months later, it happened again. Another text. Another unknown number, and more pictures, this time from the webcam on my new laptop. The background was clearly my current room, and I recognized one of the shirts I'd just worn a few days ago. That meant at least one of those photos was super recent. The worst part? I never even downloaded Tor or went anywhere near the dark web on this machine. I was extra careful this time, so I have no idea how they got in. And at this point, I'm honestly out of ideas. This was back when I was around 13, maybe in 7th grade. Me and 2 of my friends, Elena and this kid Logan, were stuck in this after-school study group for kids who just could not wrap their heads around math. It was held in the computer lab at our middle school in Dayton, Oregon. Tiny school, even tinier lab. Honestly, the whole thing felt like a punishment more than anything. The teachers there were basically just keeping an eye on us, but not actually teaching. They'd scroll through their phones or grade stuff silently. Unless someone physically asked for help, they didn't care what we were doing. Elena and I were decent friends, and we both got a kick out of teasing Logan, who took everything way too seriously. He'd try to focus on his assignments while we'd mess around just to throw him off. It became our little entertainment during those long, boring sessions. One afternoon, Logan and I were messing around online while pretending to research for our worksheet. We started typing random questions and gibberish into the browser just to see what would pop up. I genuinely can't remember what the search term was. Probably something dumb like fractions but scary. But the results weren't what we expected. The screen filled with these unsettling black and white photos. They were old, grainy, and most of them looked like they came straight out of some haunted archive. The creepiest ones were basically portrait shots of what looked like people with deformed faces, like some bizarre 1900s mugshot lineup. It gave me that same weird feeling you get when you walk into a room and forget why you're there. Something just felt off. I brushed it off at first, assuming it was one of those internet rabbit holes that make zero sense. But the weird photos kept coming up over and over in different searches. Definitely not normal search results for math homework. A couple days later, Logan stayed behind a little longer to save his homework onto the school's shared drive. The computers were old and glitchy, and somehow he clicked into the wrong folder. Instead of his stuff, he ended up in what looked like an archive of other documents, like leftover files from previous students, or maybe even old staff. It was super disorganized, but he said it felt like stumbling into someone else's inbox. When Logan clicked into the folder to save his stuff, a bunch of random files popped up that definitely weren't his. He looked over at me and went, "Dude, come here. There's some seriously creepy crap in here." I kind of laughed at first because he was always being dramatic, but then he started describing what he saw, and my stomach dropped a little. He said there was this photo of a kid sitting in a chair. Okay, not just sitting, but tied to it. The setting looked like a classroom, but everything about it was off. It was super dark, and the lighting made it look like something from a horror short film. The kid was the only thing in the shot. No desks, no posters, no windows even. Just this old metal chair, right in the middle of the room, and the kid was strapped down to it like something out of a crime doc. Logan tried to open it up bigger to show me, but it would only load this tiny preview in the corner of the screen. Still, I saw enough to confirm he wasn't just messing with me. The kid had a red t-shirt on, looked around 8 or 9 years old, and was just staring off to the side, not at the camera, but like at something just outside the frame. That weird, low-quality lighting made it hard to tell what time of day it even was. And the scariest part? The room looked exactly like one of the classrooms down the old hallway in our school, the one nobody really used anymore because of electrical issues. That photo's burned into my brain more than I'd like to admit. What messes with me the most is trying to figure out who the hell took it. It wasn't like it was a screenshot or a stock photo. Someone had been there, with a camera, in that room, taking pictures of this tied-up kid. Like, what? The fact that it was just sitting in a school computer folder, completely unprotected, still creeps me out. I mean, we weren't even trying to find anything like that. We were just goofing off, typing in dumb stuff and clicking through files like curious idiots. Makes me wonder how close we were to stumbling into something even darker. Like, if that's what we found by accident, what would have happened if we actually tried digging? I still don't know who that kid was, or why that photo even existed, but the idea that someone saved it on a school system, that school system, is honestly way more terrifying than anything we found on purpose. I was working as a nurse at a private clinic downtown when Kyle started his internship with us. He was 19, tall, lean, and always wore the same gray hoodie under his scrubs, even in warm weather. At first, he was polite and asked a lot of questions about basic procedures, how to check vitals, where we kept certain supplies, how to update records. But pretty soon, his questions started getting weird. He'd ask how long someone could survive without a hand, or what kind of painkillers would be strong enough to keep someone calm during an amputation. He phrased it like curiosity, but it always felt a bit too eager. He sat with us during lunch, mostly quiet, listening. But when he did talk, it was usually about his uncle. Supposedly, this uncle ran some underground clinic where people came in for illegal surgeries. He doesn't charge if it's something personal, Kyle once said, biting into a sandwich. Like if someone just wants to get rid of a finger they don't like. I thought it was just talk. I mean, he was young, maybe trying to be edgy. Most of the others avoided him. One of the senior nurses, Carol, called him the dead-eyed kid behind his back, But I didn't see much harm in him. Just awkward, probably lonely. Still, some things didn't add up. He knew surgical lingo better than most interns. Once I heard him explain how to tie off a brachial artery to one of the doctors, accurately. That's not something they teach that early. Another time, he corrected a resident on where to inject lidocaine for a digital nerve block. It wasn't just showing off. He was right. When I asked where he learned that, he said, "Just reading and helping my uncle sometimes." Always back to the uncle. I started watching him more closely, not just because of what he said, but how he acted around patients. He was too interested in injuries. If someone came in with a broken finger, he'd linger, not offering help, just watching. One day, a guy came in with a deep cut on his thigh from a bike accident. Kyle stood behind me as I cleaned the wound, leaning in, breathing too slow. I told him to get gauze, and he didn't move for a few seconds, just stared. Things shifted more when he started showing me stuff on his phone. One afternoon, after most of the shift had left, I was restocking supplies in the break room. Kyle came in, quiet as usual, and sat across from me. "You want to see something crazy?" he asked. I didn't really want to, but he was already pulling out his phone. He showed me a photo, a close-up of a hand, missing 2 fingers. No blood, no mess. Just clean, bandaged stubs like it had been done in an OR. He swiped. Another hand, missing the pinky. Then an arm ending at the elbow. He said, "My uncle did these. They're requests, voluntary. Some people just don't feel right with all their parts." I told him that sounded insane, and definitely illegal. He just shrugged. "It's like body integrity identity disorder. It's real. Look it up." Then he mentioned a site. There's a whole forum. People share results. It's safer than them trying it themselves. When I asked for the site's name, he avoided the question, said it wasn't public. You need an invite. You need to know someone. The photos unsettled me. They didn't look like textbook examples or anything staged. Too specific, too personal. Some had tattoos or bracelets. These weren't generic training images. I tried to tell myself maybe it was just medical students sharing their practice results. That maybe Kyle was lying about the context. But the more I thought about it, the less that made sense. There was no educational reason to photograph a hand with clean surgical amputations unless it was part of a study. And these weren't labeled. No dates, no watermarks. Kyle started acting more off. One shift, I noticed him in the supply closet, counting syringes and small vials. I asked what he was doing, and he said he was just curious about inventory. I told the head nurse, but she said as long as nothing was missing, there wasn't much she could do. "He's weird," she said, "but not against the rules." Then Kyle mentioned someone who had asked for both legs off. He chickened out last minute, he said, not sounding disappointed or relieved, just flat. My uncle prepped everything already. Had the prosthetics ready. I didn't say anything. I just walked away. A few days later, I caught him near the back exit with his phone out. He quickly pocketed it when he saw me. I glanced down and noticed he had a backpack with what looked like bundled cloth inside. When I asked where he was going, he smiled for the first time I'd ever seen and said, "Just heading out early. Got some errands for my uncle." Then he disappeared down the hallway. The next day, I checked the inventory log. A few anesthetic vials were missing. Ketamine and lidocaine. Nothing huge, but enough to do something. I told the supervisor, but again, it was brushed off. Maybe someone forgot to log it. Happens. I saw Kyle later that afternoon. He didn't look tired, but there was something off, like he was more focused. His scrubs were clean, but he had changed into a new pair. His hands were dry, cracked, like they'd been scrubbed a little too long. I didn't confront him. I wasn't sure what I'd even say, but I started locking my drawer and keeping my phone on me at all times. During a slow afternoon shift, I walked into the break room and saw Kyle's phone sitting on the table, screen still lit. He must have left it unlocked by accident. I wasn't trying to snoop, but the notification on the lock screen caught my eye. New post, bodymods.net. I hesitated, then tapped it. The browser opened straight into a message board. Dozens of posts, photos, and videos loaded instantly. The layout was crude, like an old forum, but everything was organized. Categories for limb removal, sensory deprivation, nerve disconnection. I scrolled down and felt sick. The videos weren't simulated. One showed a man lying on a wooden table, legs duct taped down, screaming as someone sawed through his forearm. The camera wasn't shaky. It was set up on a tripod. The lighting was clean, clear. I recognized the garage. It looked like the one Kyle had shown me in a photo weeks ago. I kept scrolling. Another video, different subject, similar setting. This time, the angle was wider. I could see Kyle holding down a man's shoulder, face expressionless as someone else, maybe his uncle, cut deep into flesh. Kyle was in at least 3 more videos, always assisting, never speaking. In the comment sections, people were bidding. Some offered to travel. Others just wanted the footage, requesting specific camera angles, levels of pain. One person wrote, "Make sure he's awake the whole time. No sedatives. I'll pay double." The thread had hundreds of replies. My hands were shaking. I pulled out my phone and started taking photos of the screen. I got the usernames, timestamps, links. Just as I tapped one last screenshot, I heard the door open behind me. Kyle stepped in and saw me instantly. His whole posture changed. The usual slouch was gone. He didn't say anything at first, just stared at me, then his phone, then me again. His face didn't show panic. It showed calculation. He slowly picked up his phone, locked it, and put it in his pocket. Then he smiled. "You shouldn't be in other people's stuff," he said quietly, and walked out. I stayed in the break room until my shift ended, heart pounding. Every sound in the hallway made me flinch. I thought about deleting the screenshots, then decided to back them up instead. That night, I didn't sleep. The next day, I stayed late, helping clean up after a patient emergency. Everyone else had left. I was finishing paperwork when Kyle came up behind me and said, "Can I talk to you for a sec?" His tone was calm, too calm. I nodded, trying to play it off, and followed him down the hall. He led me to the supply closet and closed the door behind us. "You saw something yesterday," he said. I tried to act confused, but he grabbed my wrist and squeezed hard enough to hurt. "Tom doesn't like attention. You understand?" I said I didn't know what he was talking about. He leaned in close, still gripping my wrist. "We recorded a guy last month. Took off his own hand with dry ice. Tom just guided him through it. Took 5 hours. Got 40 grand for that stream. People like that stuff. People pay." I didn't respond. I couldn't. He loosened his grip slightly. "We're careful. No names, no leaks. But when someone talks, well, accidents happen. Sometimes they don't walk away with all their parts. Understand?" I yanked my arm free and pushed past him. He followed me down the hallway, still talking. "No one's gonna believe you. You've got nothing. You're just scared. That's good. Be scared. Stay scared." I ran to the elevator, hit the button 4 times. Kyle didn't try to stop me, just stood there staring. I drove home without stopping. When I pulled into my apartment garage, I saw headlights pull in behind me. It was Kyle's car. I stayed in the car, locked the doors. He pulled up alongside me and rolled down his window. "You don't want to get involved in this," he called out. "You really don't." The next morning, I went to the police. I showed them everything. Screenshots, video snippets, my swollen wrist. At first, the detective seemed doubtful, like maybe I'd misunderstood something. Then I opened the browser and pulled up the site directly. I showed him the forums, the videos, the bids. I told him everything Kyle had said. The longer he watched, the quieter he got. He told me to wait, left the room, and came back with 2 more officers. Over the next few days, I was questioned multiple times. They wanted details. They asked if I knew where the garage was, who else might be involved, if any patients from the clinic had ever disappeared. I gave them everything I had. A week later, they made the arrests. Kyle, his uncle Tom, and 10 others from different states. Some were moderators, others were performing or requesting surgeries. A couple had medical licenses. Most didn't. The operation had been going for almost 6 years. They'd performed dozens of amputations, some voluntary, others not. They streamed them all. They took requests. They sold edited clips. One man in Texas paid $12,000 for a video where someone had their ear sewn shut while conscious. Another ordered a slow removal of toes, 1 per week. Kyle agreed to cooperate in exchange for leniency. He gave up names, locations, payment trails. He got probation. His uncle wasn't so lucky. He was hit with charges for aggravated assault, illegal practice of medicine, conspiracy, and more. He got 18 years. Others got between 5 and 10. Some pled out. I quit the clinic a month later, moved to a different city, changed my number. I still work in healthcare, but I don't tell people where. Sometimes, at night, I check the door twice. Look out the window. Make sure no one's waiting in the parking lot. Every now and then, I check the site, just to see if it's gone. The domain still exists, but it's been blank for months. The detective told me this wasn't the only network, just the one we caught. He said some people don't want to be helped. They want to be hurt. And someone, somewhere, is always willing to give them what they ask for. I met Jessica during shift change at the textile plant. She worked nights, I worked mornings. We crossed paths for maybe 20 minutes every day, right around 5:40 a.m. when the buzzer went off and the night crew trickled out. She'd usually be pulling her hair back into a bun, grabbing her hoodie, looking half asleep but always polite. "Morning," she'd say, or just a quick nod if she was tired. Over a couple weeks we started talking. Just small stuff at first. Weather, traffic, her kids. She had 2 teenagers, and she was always hustling for overtime when she could get it. I remember she said the warehouse paid more at night. Something about hazard pay or weird hours. She never complained about it, though. Said she liked the quiet. Said she could think better when no one was yelling. The complex itself was huge. Several buildings, one of them long abandoned, used now and then to store extra pallets. Most of us didn't go near it. Half the lights in that section flickered, and the floor had cracked in places. Jessica wasn't the type to stir trouble. Always showed up early, clocked out on time, kept to herself unless someone talked to her first. If you needed help loading a bin, she'd step in. She didn't gossip in the break room, didn't mess with anyone's stuff. It's why I was thrown when she started acting off one morning. She was standing by the vending machines, staring out toward the edge of the lot. I asked if she was okay. She said, "I think something's going on over by Building 5. That was one of the abandoned ones. I told her it was probably just rats or a broken sensor tripping the floodlights. She didn't laugh. She said she'd seen trucks pull up around 3 a.m., headlights off, real quiet. They don't use that dock, she told me. No one's supposed to. But they're unloading something. I brushed it off. I figured maybe the company was renting space. But her face stuck with me all morning. Over the next few days, she brought it up again. Said the trucks came every other night. Same two, dark-colored, no logos. One of them had out-of-state plates. She started writing down the plate numbers. She showed me a torn scrap of paper, 4 or 5 numbers jotted in messy pen. If something happens, she said, and kind of laughed, but not like it was a joke. Then she said the security guards avoided the area. They'd do their usual rounds, then skip Building 5 completely. She asked one of them why. The guy just shrugged and walked away. That's when she started staying late. After her shift, she'd sit in her car facing the warehouse. They don't even try to hide it, she told me. They know nobody's watching. I still wasn't sure if I believed her. Maybe she was tired. She worked 6 nights a week, had 2 kids, barely slept. But the way she talked, it was specific. She said the back dock doors were always shut during the day, but during those 3 a.m. visits, someone opened them from the inside. That part made me pause. Inside? Who was in there? She took pictures. At first, blurry ones from far away. A red truck, a couple guys moving boxes fast, one of them glancing around. They don't stay more than 20 minutes, she told me. Just in, out, gone. She tried showing the photos to our supervisor. I was there. His face changed. He told her not to worry about it. "You're not paid to investigate," he said, and tossed the photo on his desk. I asked her what she was expecting. She said, "I just want to know what they're moving." The next morning, she looked tired, more than usual. She told me she waited till 4 a.m. the night before. The trucks didn't show. She thought maybe they knew she was watching. Or maybe they only came when no one was scheduled on that side. She asked me if I'd ever seen anyone else over there. I hadn't. I didn't even park on that side. Most of us didn't. She got quieter after that. Still showed up. Still nodded when she passed me. But she stopped talking during changeover. A week passed. Then another. I figured she'd dropped it. Then one day, she handed me a folded sheet of paper. "Keep this," she said, "just in case." Inside were 10 photos. Better quality. She must have gotten closer. One showed a man lifting a long black case from the back of a truck. Another showed a second man, face visible, standing by the dock door holding what looked like a walkie-talkie. She'd circled their faces. On the back, she'd written the date and time. April 12th, 3:17 a.m. I didn't know what to do with it. I kept it in my glove compartment. That night, I didn't sleep. Next morning, Jessica didn't show. Not during changeover. Not later either. I asked around. No one had seen her. Supervisor said she'd called out. That didn't sound like her. I went out during lunch and walked the length of the parking lot, stopping just outside the chain-link fence near Building 5. There were tire marks in the gravel, a few plastic straps lying near the loading dock. One of them looked freshly cut. I backed away fast and didn't say anything to anyone. When I got back to my car, I looked across the lot. On the far side, just barely visible through the grime on the warehouse window, I saw a flicker of movement. Someone was inside. Jessica came in Tuesday morning looking like she hadn't slept in days. Her hands were shaking while she tied back her hair. I asked if she was okay, and she pulled me aside near the break room, away from cameras. She said, "I saw inside last night. I mean, really saw. Her voice was low, barely above a whisper. I asked what she meant. She said she slipped in through a side door left cracked open. Said the trucks were late, so she had time to look around. Inside, she said it looked like a hospital freezer. Metal containers, labeled with codes and red stickers. Some open. She said she saw plastic bags filled with what looked like organs, livers, kidneys, maybe hearts. They were sorting them, she told me. 2 guys in scrubs, like surgeons. Gloves, masks, the whole thing. One of them was checking tags on the bags. I asked why she didn't call the cops. She just stared at me. They'll kill me, she said. They're not street thugs. They have real money. She showed me her phone. She had video, maybe 2 minutes long, shaky footage from behind a stack of pallets. Blurry, but you could see the men moving between the containers. You could hear one of them say something about a schedule and Bangkok next week. I felt sick watching it. She said she overheard them talking about donors and clients overseas. Then she looked down and said, "They know I saw." The night before, her landline rang 5 times. She picked up each time. Silence. No background noise, no clicks. Just someone on the other end, breathing. She'd unplugged it by the 5th call. Her cell was doing the same thing. Unknown numbers calling at all hours. No voicemails, no texts, just endless rings. I begged her to leave. "Take your kids and go," I said. "You don't need proof. Just go." She looked at me like she wanted to. But then she said, "I'm 3 weeks from getting them new school uniforms. Rent's due. I don't have savings." She was crying, but she wasn't panicking. She was just tired. If I disappear now, who's going to believe me later? That was the last time we had a long talk. 2 days later, my phone buzzed at 6 a.m. I was getting ready for work. My coworker had sent a Facebook link. "Jessica's going nuts," the message said. I clicked it. She had gone live overnight. The video was 15 minutes long. She was in her living room, holding her phone at arm's length. Her voice was tense, but she didn't sound confused or hysterical. She named the warehouse, said the company name, showed the footage she took. She flipped through photos, reading license plates out loud. "They're moving human organs," she said. "I don't care if you believe me. Just watch. Look at this." The video caught fire online. Within hours, people were sharing it. Local pages reposted. People commented with disbelief, anger, curiosity. But then it turned. Accounts with no profile pictures started showing up. "You're dead," one comment said. Another posted her full name, address, phone number. Someone posted the names of her kids and what school they went to. I texted her, told her to take it down, but she never responded. She tried deleting the post, but it had already been saved, reposted to Telegram, Twitter, forums. People were messaging her constantly. Her voicemail was full. I tried calling that night, straight to voicemail. I figured she turned off her phone. I didn't sleep. The next day, she didn't show. Supervisor said nothing. Just checked her name off the schedule and moved on. I went by her apartment after work. Her car was in the lot. Lights off. I knocked, waited, knocked again. Nothing. A neighbor peeked out their door, shook their head. "Haven't seen her," they said. That night, people on Reddit started saying she'd been taken. One guy posted that black SUVs had pulled into her complex around 9 p.m. He claimed he heard shouting, maybe a kid crying, but he wasn't sure. Police didn't come. No report was filed. The next morning, I drove by again. Her car was gone. Windows shut. No answer at the door. 3 days passed. I went to work, kept my head down. Then the news broke. Police found body parts in a sealed container at a disposal yard across town. Maintenance crew had flagged it for the smell. Inside was a cooler, blood-soaked towels, and several plastic bags. The report said DNA confirmed the remains belonged to Jessica. There was no sign of her kids. No one could say when they were last seen. Her phone had been turned off for days. Police said foul play was suspected. Then they stopped talking. I tried asking questions at work. No one answered. The warehouse was closed off for one day, then reopened. People said the area had been cleaned out. No crates, no trucks, nothing left behind. Cameras wiped. The guards rotated out the next week. When I asked where the old ones went, I was told not to ask. 2 weeks later, men in black suits came to the factory. Federal agents, we were told. They interviewed a few people, then left. No one was arrested. No charges filed. Jessica's name disappeared from the attendance log. Her locker was emptied. Her name was gone from the system, like she never worked there. I transferred 2 months later. Different facility, different town. I kept my mouth shut. Deleted old texts. Burned the papers she gave me. I didn't keep copies of the video. I don't talk about it, not with anyone in person. But I think about it every time I drive past industrial parks or see unmarked trucks at night. I don't trust silence anymore. The district still runs like nothing happened. New workers, fresh coats of paint on the buildings. But the old crew knows. We don't say her name. We don't mention the warehouse. We just clock in, do our job, and clock out. People think the scariest thing is ghosts or killers in the dark. It's not. It's knowing that some truths are too dangerous to speak. That money can erase anything, even a mother and her kids. I was 19 and working a summer internship at a tech company when I met Marcus. He was 24, one of the back-end programmers. On my second day, he showed me how to set up the internal dev environment, stayed behind to help me fix some error logs, then brought me a coffee the next morning. I figured he was just being nice. A few days later, he was at my desk again, asking what classes I was taking back at school. He remembered I'd mentioned psychology. That stuck out to me. Most people at the company didn't seem to listen much when interns talked. The office was a quiet, open-plan floor, desks in rows, glass walls separating conference rooms. I sat near the middle. Marcus would walk over a few times a day with some excuse, asking if I had an extra charger, if I'd tried the food truck outside, even borrowing my stapler once. It was always something small. He started bringing me coffee 2 or 3 times a week, always just the way I liked it. I said thank you every time. I didn't think much of it until the company July party. It was held on the rooftop. Casual drinks, catered snacks. Marcus asked if I was going, then offered to go up together. I didn't think it would be a date or anything, but the second we got there, he kept hovering. Every time I spoke to someone, co-workers, other interns, Marcus would cut in or stand close like he was watching the conversation. When I went to get another drink, he followed me and asked, "Do you like hanging out with him?" referring to one of the other interns. I laughed it off, said we were just talking. His face didn't move. That's when I started feeling off about him. That Monday, I told him, politely, that I didn't think we should hang out outside of work, and that I wanted to keep things professional. He didn't argue, just nodded and said, "Sure, of course," then walked away. After that, things shifted. He stopped bringing coffee, didn't say hi, but I caught him staring at me sometimes from across the room. Once, I turned around in the kitchen, and he was right behind me, too close, just watching. I started taking longer routes through the building to avoid him. By mid-August, the internship ended. I packed up, gave my badge to HR, and took the train back to school in Boston. I blocked Marcus on social media the day I left, just to be safe. A week later, I posted a picture with my new boyfriend. I forgot about Marcus. The call came on a Tuesday morning, second week of September. I was still half asleep when I answered. The man on the other end said, "This is Special Agent Miller with the FBI. I need to speak to you about a matter involving your personal safety." I sat up fast. Thought it was a scam. But he gave a callback number and an agent ID. He said they'd identified a threat against my life. He told me that their cyber unit had been monitoring activity on several dark web forums, ones that are used for illegal contracts, including murder for hire. He said a user with the handle Shadow47 had posted a photo of me, along with my full name, address, and even details about my daily schedule. When I left my apartment, where I worked part-time, which routes I took to class. It included the color of my backpack. I couldn't speak for a second. Then I asked if this was some kind of mistake. He said no. His voice stayed flat, calm. He told me the contract was originally listed as a kidnapping, with a buyer offering to pay $4,000. But 3 days ago, the listing was updated to an assassination contract, with the price raised to $7,500. He said the payment had already been put into a crypto escrow account, which meant someone was taking it seriously. He asked if I knew anyone who might want to hurt me. I froze. Marcus came to mind instantly. I hadn't spoken to him since the internship, but I remembered the way he acted at the party, the way he stared at me in the kitchen. Then I remembered the photo I'd posted with my boyfriend. It went up 4 days ago. The timing matched too well. I told Agent Miller about Marcus, explained everything. The coffee, the party, how I'd turned him down. Miller asked if Marcus had any military background, access to weapons, or criminal history. I didn't know. He said they would look into him. Then he asked me not to go anywhere alone, to keep my phone on at all times, and to avoid posting anything online for now. By that evening, campus police were informed. I was moved into a different dorm under a temporary name. My boyfriend wasn't allowed to stay over. They put a camera at the entrance to the building and gave me a panic button app linked directly to local law enforcement. I kept the blinds down and stopped wearing my usual jacket, changed my routes, and stopped checking social media altogether. The agent said they had flagged the crypto wallet involved in the transaction, but it had already been split into smaller amounts and was hard to trace. The contractor hadn't communicated again on the forum, which meant either they were already in motion or waiting for confirmation. I asked if I could go home to my parents. Miller said it wasn't safe to move yet. On Thursday morning, I got a call again. This time, Miller said they had linked the account Shadow47 to an IP address used briefly by someone in the tech company's guest Wi-Fi network during a 30-minute window in August. They were trying to match MAC addresses, but it was slow going. Then he said they had reason to believe the account accessed my LinkedIn profile recently. I opened my laptop and checked the Who Viewed Your Profile section. Near the top was Anonymous LinkedIn Member. It had shown up 2 days after I posted the photo of me and my boyfriend. Miller showed me screenshots from the dark web post. My face was clearly visible in one of them. I was walking out of my apartment building, holding my backpack, headphones in. Another showed me at the corner store a block away, looking down at my phone. The third was from behind, taken from a distance, but it was me crossing campus near the engineering building. The photos had timestamps. Some were from 2 weeks ago. Others were just 5 days old. Someone had been following me, learning my schedule, taking pictures without me ever noticing. The text of the post detailed everything: my name, age, major, Even the floor my dorm room was on. It described my usual wake-up time, my morning coffee stop, when I went to class, and what times I was likely to be alone. The post had instructions to ensure the scene resembles a failed mugging or pedestrian accident. I stared at that line for a long time. Miller told me that while most dark web murder-for-hire sites were scams, this one had been linked to 2 other real cases, both unsolved, both with similar language in the listings. He said they'd had trouble with jurisdiction and tracing payments, but this wasn't just internet noise. He asked if I recognized anything in the writing. The style reminded me of how Marcus wrote his work emails, weirdly formal, with phrases like, "as per previous discussion," and "pursuant to schedule." The username Shadow47 didn't match anything directly, but Miller said they were already building a digital profile for Marcus and needed something more concrete. I kept thinking about the times Marcus stood silently near me in the kitchen, or how he seemed to know when I was going to lunch. Every little moment started feeling heavier. Miller told me to stay low, limit all movement, and not post anything online. They were working on a warrant. The next day, Miller had an idea. He asked if I'd be willing to call Marcus while they recorded. The goal was to get him talking, maybe say something incriminating. I agreed, even though my hands were shaking when I dialed. It rang twice before Marcus picked up. "Hey," I said. "It's me. Hope this isn't weird. I've been having some issues with a script from the internship project. Thought you might know what's up." His voice shifted immediately. Friendly, cheerful. "Oh, hey. Wow, it's good to hear from you. Yeah, sure, what's going on with it?" I kept it casual, asked about the config files and some dependency stuff. He gave a detailed answer, asked what kind of laptop I was using now. Then, unprompted, he said, "You still doing the 9 a.m. coffee thing before class?" My stomach dropped. I'd never told him that. I tried to keep my voice even. "Yeah, sometimes. I've been feeling kind of unsafe lately. Weird stuff happening around my building." There was a pause. "You should really be more careful about who you trust," he said. "People put a lot online without realizing how visible they are." I said, "Yeah, the FBI actually called me. Something about someone trying to hurt me." Another pause. "They called you?" His tone shifted. Tight. "That's insane. Who'd even do that? I mean, you've always been a little dramatic, but FBI? Really?" I asked. "You sure you don't know anything about that?" He raised his voice. "Of course not. That's ridiculous. Are you accusing me of something?" Before I could answer, he hung up. Miller said it was enough to get a judge to sign off on searching Marcus's personal laptop and drives. The next 72 hours were a blur. I stayed in my dorm, barely sleeping. They found a backup drive in his apartment. It had folders of screenshots from my Instagram, posts I'd since deleted, and several documents that tracked my schedule down to the hour. Some were labeled with dates, some had maps. But the biggest find was a record of cryptocurrency wallet keys and a payment log that matched the hit contract. The amount, $7,500, was traced through a series of transfers, and it landed in an escrow system used by the site Miller showed me. They also found several fake social media accounts created from his IP range, all following my pages, sometimes messaging my friends. He'd even joined a subreddit for students at my university, using it to comment on events and locations. But even with all that, prosecution got complicated. The dark web platform was overseas, the contract went through anonymous wallets, and legally proving intent without a direct confession was difficult. The defense argued the material could have been faked, that there was no direct communication between Marcus and anyone on the site. Without a clear chain of contact between him and a killer, the charges didn't hold. Marcus took a plea on a lesser charge related to digital stalking and harassment. He moved to another state during pre-trial. The FBI said they'd keep tabs on him, but there was no legal way to block him from starting over elsewhere. His record was sealed after the plea. They couldn't link him definitively to the dark web account. I stopped using my real name online, deleted old posts, changed my number, even left school a semester early. I moved to a different city and got a new ID. I didn't tell many people where I went. I still don't. I look over my shoulder when I go out, check for cameras near my apartment, avoid routines. Miller said there are dozens, maybe hundreds, of sites like the one that listed me. He said some are jokes, scams for desperate people. But others, like this one, are real enough. He said the FBI has a backlog of cases involving anonymous threats and contracts where nothing can be proven. A lot of them never get resolved. I still think about how easy it was, how someone with a grudge could take a few photos, write a few lines, and push a button. That's all it took. The scariest part wasn't that Marcus tried to have me killed. It's that he didn't need to be special or smart to do it. He just needed internet access. Professor Cooper was my favorite computer science instructor during my junior year at the university. He made things like sorting algorithms and decision trees actually interesting, even for people like me who weren't naturally good at that stuff. He had a way of breaking down concepts that made you feel smart for getting them. I remember sitting in the third row every Monday and Wednesday, trying to keep up with his whiteboard examples and the rapid-fire questions he threw at the class. He remembered everyone's name by the second week and asked about our internships, side projects, even the clubs we joined. He was tall, lean, always wore button-downs with the sleeves rolled up. His glasses had a small crack on the left frame, which he never seemed to fix. He'd stay after class answering our dumbest questions without ever making us feel dumb. I once asked him something that was already explained in the syllabus, and he just nodded and re-explained like it was no big deal. Everyone liked him. Some of the guys called him Coop, but he never corrected them. I had trouble with my capstone proposal that semester. Cooper spent 2 hours helping me reshape it into something feasible and impressive. When I told him I was working nights at a cafe to cover rent, he offered to write me a reference letter for a paid research assistant role. He even told me about a scholarship program I hadn't heard of. He knew stuff like that. How to navigate university bureaucracy, where to go for grants, internships, publishing opportunities. I trusted him completely. So did most of the class. He had published papers on data ethics and surveillance capitalism, and he'd cite real cases in class to show how easy it was for companies to abuse data. It sounded scary, but it came from someone who seemed like he actually cared. He'd say things like, "Be paranoid, it's the healthy choice." And we laughed, because it was Cooper, and he was usually right. We all followed each other on social media. Some of us followed Cooper too. He had a private Instagram and a lockdown Twitter. Once in a while, he'd like a picture of someone's cat, or repost an article one of us had shared. I figured he just wanted to stay connected, like any mentor would. I didn't notice anything strange until mid-semester. It was small things at first. He'd mention specific tweets or Instagram captions during class. He'd say it was just an example of how public people were with their lives, but sometimes it felt targeted. Once he brought up a classmate's drunk photo and joked about how fast employers can find stuff like that. We laughed, but the class went quiet right after. Another time, a girl named Sarah mentioned a fight she was having with her roommate. Cooper told her to check her location settings because apps could leak private data. He added, "Also, maybe don't vent on your close friend's story. Not everyone keeps things confidential." Sarah didn't say anything, just nodded. But after class, I saw her delete her entire account. He said these things like teaching moments, but the details were too exact. He wasn't just browsing our profiles. He was watching. Then came the survey. Cooper handed out a digital habits questionnaire. 20 questions, all about our browsing history, password choices, family devices, who had access to our accounts. He told us it was part of his cybersecurity research and that our answers were anonymous. I didn't think much of it. I filled it out like everyone else. A week later, he asked me how my sister liked the new iPad. I never told him I had a sister. The only place I'd mentioned it was in the survey, under who in your household uses shared devices. I froze. He noticed and smiled. Don't worry, it's just research. He often used our real social media pages in lectures. He'd screenshot examples of public LinkedIn bios, Instagram settings, even Venmo histories, always with the names cropped out, but we recognized ourselves. This is what recruiters see, he'd say, and this is how scammers find your mother's maiden name. Some students would groan or laugh. No one complained. He spent a lot of time with first years too. I started noticing him in the cafeteria, sitting with freshmen, always talking about digital safety. Turn off geotags, he'd say. Don't sync your photos to the cloud. He'd offer to look over their settings, sometimes even take their phones and start changing things. They let him. He had authority, charm. He'd message students outside of class too. Once he DM'd me after I posted a photo from my late shift at the cafe. You really should blur your name tag. Just looking out. That part sounded okay, but when I checked, the name tag wasn't visible unless you zoomed in hard. He had done that. He was zooming in. One student, Jonah, told me Cooper messaged him late at night about his Twitch streams. Said he was watching to make sure Jonah wasn't revealing too much personal info. Kinda weird, Jonah said. But he was just looking out, I guess. I didn't reply. Cooper also asked us to send him examples of phishing emails and suspicious DMs. He said he was building a teaching tool to help identify scams. I forwarded a few. Others did too. Now I wonder if we just gave him access to our inboxes. When another student, Elena, mentioned her brother's run-in with the law, Cooper suggested she make her Facebook private. A few days later, he casually referenced her brother's arrest record during office hours. She brushed it off, but I saw her leave his office looking shaken. The oddest thing was how often he talked about being careful with metadata. He'd say things like, "Even your silence is data," or "Every click leaves a trail." At the time, it sounded deep. Now it sounds like a warning. The semester went on. Cooper kept collecting. Students kept sharing. He made himself essential. We never questioned it. We were studying security. Everything he did seemed like a lesson. But behind every lesson, he was building a file. A detailed profile. On all of us. Things started to get weird around campus not long after midterms. It was subtle at first. A few freshmen who had taken Cooper's intro courses stopped showing up to class. One of them, Kelly, had been really active in the computer science forums and showed up to every tutoring session. She was just gone. Someone said she transferred, but no one knew where. Another guy, Kevin, left after spring break, and all his social accounts went dark the same day. Everyone just assumed personal stuff came up. That's what the professors said. Family emergency was the phrase used most often. Then, one night after my shift, I overheard two students whispering in the library about someone getting threatening DMs. Stuff like, "I know what you did," and "Send more, or I'll release everything." It sounded like a scam at first, but they mentioned that the messages included private details, stuff nobody else should have known. Things people only talked about in DMs or posts that had already been deleted. At first, I thought maybe they got hacked. It escalated quickly. Another girl, Emma, who had just started the CS program, left school after saying someone was stalking her online. She'd gotten texts with photos of her walking to her dorm. Photos she didn't take. She went home the next day. Campus police said it was being investigated, but no one ever told us what happened. I couldn't stop thinking about what Cooper used to say in class. Everything leaves a trail. Metadata never lies. It was all sounding different now. I started to put things together. The students who left or got messages, most had taken Cooper's intro class. Most were younger, new to campus, the type who'd turn to a friendly professor for guidance. I brought it up during one of Cooper's office hours. I mentioned the rumors, students dropping out, weird messages. He didn't seem surprised. He said, "This is exactly why I push cybersecurity so hard. There are predators out there. You can't be too careful." He said it calmly, but something about his tone stuck with me. Not defensive, not shocked, just aware. Like he'd already thought it through. I asked him if the university was looking into it. He said, "They should be, but these things take time." The next week, I stopped by the CS lounge and saw him sitting with a first-year student named Riley. Cooper was holding Riley's phone, pointing at the settings. Riley looked confused, but nodded along. I walked away before they noticed me. That night, I deleted all my old posts, locked my accounts, and changed every password. Then it happened. On a Tuesday morning, I walked into class 5 minutes late. Cooper was mid-sentence, explaining a machine learning concept. I sat down and opened my laptop. 2 men in suits entered through the back. Everyone turned. They walked straight to the front, flashed badges, and asked Cooper to step aside. He froze. One of the agents said, "Professor Richard Cooper, you're under arrest for charges related to sexual exploitation and extortion." The room went completely silent. Someone dropped a water bottle. They cuffed him right there. Cooper didn't argue. He just kept saying, "There's been a mistake. This isn't what it looks like." The agents ignored him and collected his laptop, phone, and a stack of papers from his desk. We all sat frozen as they walked him out. One student started crying quietly. No one said anything. Later that afternoon, the university sent an email. It confirmed Cooper's arrest and said he'd been running a scheme for years. Using fake social media profiles, he'd contacted minors, built relationships, and manipulated them into sending explicit content. Then he'd blackmail them for more. He used knowledge from our classes, data scraping, account forensics, password recovery, to find everything he could on his targets. They said 28 victims were identified, some as young as 13. A few had attempted suicide. Most hadn't spoken up until investigators found their records on Cooper's encrypted drives. It felt like the ground dropped out from under us. Everyone I talked to felt the same way. Cooper had been the guy you trusted, the smart one, the one who cared. The trial was long. The prosecutors laid out everything in detail. Cooper had created over 100 fake identities, used voice changers, encrypted messaging apps, burner accounts. He covered his digital trail using VPNs and proxy chains. He used cryptocurrency to buy blackmail tools and message scrapers off dark web forums. The FBI found code on his computer that could scrape Facebook, Instagram, and Discord conversations without triggering alerts. They brought in digital forensics experts to explain how he tracked victims' devices through metadata hidden in images. He kept files on each person, screenshots, chat logs, photos, even voice recordings. Each victim had a folder labeled with a nickname. Some folders had detailed psychological notes. Cooper used everything he could to maintain control. Threats to ruin reputations, leak images, even messages to family members. He was sentenced to 28 years in federal prison. 89 counts of exploitation and extortion. No parole. The university tried to act fast. They set up a new department for online safety, required all staff communication with students to go through university channels, and banned personal contact outside official platforms. Faculty had to attend training on boundaries and digital ethics. But none of it changed what happened. Some of the victims testified anonymously. Some didn't speak at all. A few attended the hearings in person. I remember one of them leaving the courtroom, walking fast, hood up, never looking back. I finished my degree the next year, got a job in network security, but I stopped volunteering as a peer mentor. I didn't go to office hours anymore. When new professors emailed, I replied with one-word answers. Everyone said Cooper was one of the best. That's what made it easy for him. I moved to Chicago in late August, just before the semester started. I was 21, had never lived alone before, and didn't know anyone in the US. My English was okay. I could order food and ask for directions, but anything more than that felt like a performance. I rented a studio apartment about 15 minutes from campus. It was small, barely enough space for a mattress on the floor, a desk, and a metal shelf I used as a kitchen. The window faced a brick wall, so the light was always gray. Most days I stayed inside. I'd wake up, make coffee in a cracked French press I got for $3 at a thrift store, and spend the rest of the day coding on my laptop. The university was big and loud. Everyone moved fast, like they were already late. I tried joining a few study groups, but I didn't fit in. Most of them already had their circles. I smiled, nodded, and eventually stopped trying. Nights were worse. I didn't sleep well. I'd scroll Reddit or watch YouTube until 3 or 4 a.m. Sometimes I'd just stare at the ceiling, counting the buzzing from the fridge like seconds. After about a month, I downloaded this meetup app meant for international students. I figured maybe I'd find someone else like me, lonely, but trying. At first, the app was dead. Most conversations ended at hey. But then this guy Ryan messaged me. His profile picture was normal. Him in front of a fountain, wearing a baseball cap. He said he was from the suburbs, but studied marketing in the city. What stood out was he didn't ask the usual small talk. He asked where I was from, what I was working on. He actually listened when I told him about a mobile app I was building for class. He even offered suggestions. We chatted every day after that. Texts at first, then voice notes. He sent memes, asked about my culture, and told me he admired people who take big risks, like moving overseas. It felt nice. I didn't think too hard about it. He was friendly and funny. He liked the same movies I did and sent me articles about programming trends. Sometimes we'd talk late into the night, just trading dumb stories or daydreaming about future careers. It was the first time since arriving that I didn't feel invisible. Ryan said he knew how hard it was to start over. He said he'd had to rebuild his life after dropping out of college, that he respected my discipline and wanted to see me succeed. I believed him. But a few weeks in, he started asking strange questions. They didn't seem odd at first. He asked what my routine was like, when I usually woke up, when I left for class, what stores I went to. I thought maybe he wanted to meet up sometime, so I answered casually. But he kept asking for more. Did I usually come home before dark? Did I ever leave the door unlocked by accident? He asked if I had family nearby or if anyone was visiting soon. I laughed it off and said no one was coming, and he replied, "Good. It's easier to focus without distractions." He also wanted to know exactly where I lived. I didn't want to tell him the full address, so I said near campus. He pressed for more, Said he might have job connections and needed to know what area. I gave him the cross streets. He asked what floor I was on. When I hesitated, he said he was just trying to help. Opportunities are about timing, he said. I don't want you to miss one. Then he brought up YouTube. Said he'd been watching student creators blow up and make money fast. He said I could do that too. Make videos about international student life, tips for surviving in the US, how to build an app from scratch. He'd manage the branding and help me edit. I told him I didn't have the gear. He said he did, and that he could bring it over. We'll set it up together, he said. It'll be fun. I was flattered. No one had ever said I had potential like that. He said I had that face people trust and a calm voice. I started to imagine it, finally earning money from something I enjoyed, maybe even helping my parents back home. But something felt off. He was too insistent. He kept saying the channel had to feel authentic, which meant filming at my place, showing my daily life. He offered to come over that weekend to map out the content plan. I said I'd think about it. The next day, he told me not to tell anyone about the channel yet. Said he didn't want others to steal the idea. That it had to stay our little secret until it was ready. He even joked, if people knew how good it's gonna be, they'd ruin it before we launch. I asked him why he was being so secretive. He said that's just how good marketing worked. Nobody successful gets there by sharing too soon, he said. You gotta protect the seed before it grows. I told myself maybe that made sense. Maybe he was just being smart. But I started checking the peephole every time I heard noise in the hallway. I began locking my door, even when I was inside, just in case. We met at a coffee shop near the Riverwalk. I picked the place because it was public, bright, and usually packed with people. I got there first and sat near the window. When Ryan walked in, I barely recognized him. He didn't look like the guy in the pictures at all. He looked older, mid-30s, maybe more. Thinner, paler, and something about his eyes made me uneasy. They didn't move like normal. He scanned every corner of the cafe before walking over, like he was calculating exits. He smiled like we were old friends and sat down without ordering anything. From the start, he talked non-stop about internet fame, content strategies, how average people become household names if they just take risks. He kept repeating the phrase, extraordinary circumstances. I nodded and tried to follow along, but he wasn't really having a conversation. He was performing. Then he pulled out his phone and started recording me. Just capturing the vibe, he said. I laughed a little and asked to see the footage. He frowned and locked the screen. It's better raw, he said. You'll see later. I asked what exactly he wanted to film for the channel. Instead of answering, he showed me news articles on his phone. Stories about influencers who went viral after some dramatic event. Car accidents, crimes, hospital visits. Each time, he pointed out how many views the videos got, how fast their accounts grew. Then he opened his gallery. There were screenshots of my Instagram posts, Facebook pictures, even an old photo I'd only uploaded to a private story once. How did you get these? I asked. He grinned. Research. It's all part of the creative process. I told him that was crossing the line. He laughed and said, "You're too sensitive. This is what real producers do." Something in me said I should leave right then. But I didn't. I told myself I was overreacting, that maybe this was just how ambitious people behaved. I stayed for another 10 minutes, barely speaking. He kept filming. 2 days later, he messaged me about coming to his place. Said he had a studio in his apartment and wanted to show me the plan. I said I was busy. He insisted. Said the channel couldn't move forward unless we met on neutral ground. I didn't want to go. but part of me thought I should at least see what he meant before making a final decision. So I agreed. Midday, short visit, just to see the gear. The apartment was in a basement on the west side. The building looked run down. No buzzer, just a door that opened to a stairwell. Inside, the place was dark. Thick curtains blocked out every bit of sunlight. The living room was cluttered with camera gear, laptops, tripods, wires taped to the walls. On one wall were printed photos of random people, some clearly from public places, others from private settings. Some of the photos had red X marks across the faces. He led me to a small room with a single chair and lights mounted around it. "This is where the magic happens," he said. Then he handed me a stack of printed papers. It was a full script of a supposed documentary about me, my childhood, my journey to the US, struggles, dreams. But it included details I never told him, specific things about my old school, my father's job, even the name of the neighborhood bakery back home. I skimmed the pages, feeling cold. He'd been researching me far longer than we'd been talking. I told him I needed to go. He stepped in front of the door. "We're not done," he said. "This project matters. We're building something unforgettable." He walked over to his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a hammer. "Real art," he said slowly, "requires sacrifice." He stood there, gripping the handle like he wasn't sure what to do next. I kept calm. I asked him more questions about the script, pretending I was curious. I said the concept had potential. I asked if I could use the bathroom. He didn't say anything, just nodded. Inside the bathroom, the window was small but openable. I pushed it up. Rusty, loud. I could hear him pacing outside. I climbed up, pushed through, and dropped down into an alley filled with broken glass and trash bags. I didn't stop. I ran 6 blocks without checking behind me. I crossed 2 intersections and didn't wait for the light. When I saw the police station, I sprinted inside and told them everything. They took me seriously. 2 officers interviewed me separately. I showed them the messages, the photos, the script. Within an hour, they were at Ryan's apartment. What they found was worse than I expected. Dozens of surveillance photos, not just of me, but of at least 3 other students, all international, all around my age. Most were screenshots, but some were clearly taken through windows or at bus stops. They found voice recordings, chat logs, scripts. One file folder was labeled Phase 2. He had chat histories with other students. He used the same words, same phrases about fame, sacrifice, and extraordinary moments. They also found documents about past legal issues, a history of violence, mostly involving animals, but no prior convictions. He was obsessed with viral videos involving real harm. According to one detective, Ryan had been escalating. My name was on a short list under the heading Execution Plan. He was arrested that evening, charged with stalking, attempted kidnapping, and possession of illegal surveillance gear. The detective later told me that if I hadn't escaped when I did, things might have gone differently. I didn't ask what that meant. I didn't want to know. I transferred colleges within 2 weeks. New city, new number, no social media. I told my parents I just wanted a fresh start. They never knew the full story. Sometimes I still get anxious when someone stands too close or asks too many questions about my routine. But I've learned. People like Ryan look for lonely people. People who want to be seen. I don't blame myself anymore. But I don't let anyone film me either. Not ever. When I started college, I was just trying to fit in. I didn't have much money, like I was skipping meals and microwaving rice in my dorm. but I still wanted to hang with the group in my building. Everyone smoked, and at first I just mooched here and there. Eventually, I started buying small bags from some guy 2 floors down, but he always overcharged, and the quality wasn't even that good. One night, a guy from my econ class showed me how to use darknet markets. It sounded sketchy at first, but he walked me through it. He had ordered from this guy called Green Phoenix 5 times with no issues. The website had ratings like eBay. Green Phoenix had 5 stars, hundreds of reviews, and promised stealth delivery. The first order I placed was small, just a gram, to test it. It arrived 4 days later inside a fake computer mouse. Totally sealed, no smell, super clean. I was shocked. After that, I started ordering regularly. Always discreet packaging, sometimes hidden inside power banks or wedged in hollowed-out textbooks. Never any hiccups, no missed packages, no delays. Green Phoenix responded quickly to messages and answered my questions like a pro. Within a month, I stopped buying from the dorm guy entirely. I didn't tell him why. I just ghosted. I started ordering a little extra each time and splitting it up with friends. At first, it was just to cover my own cost. Then I realized I could make enough to buy groceries, pay my phone bill, even take girls out now and then. I wasn't making bank, but I wasn't broke anymore. Green Phoenix noticed too. After maybe my 6th or 7th order, he offered me discounts for bulk purchases. Like $30 off an eighth, $100 off an ounce. I said yes every time. I was still careful. I used different drop addresses, mailboxes around the city, friends' houses when they were cool with it. I even got a P.O. box under a fake name once. 6 months in, I had made 15 successful purchases. No issues. All smooth. Green Phoenix and I had this rhythm. Order. Confirm payment. He ships within a day. One time, I asked him about trying something new, and he sent me a sample for free. That's when I stopped seeing him as just a vendor. He felt like a partner, almost. Not a friend exactly, but someone I could count on. We never talked about anything personal. It was always strictly business. But there was trust. At least I thought so. Then he messaged me something that threw me off. He said he was relocating, didn't say why, and needed to move a large amount fast. He offered me a full pound for $800. Normally that would go for over $2,000 easy, sometimes more depending on quality. He even sent pictures. Looked like dense, clean buds. I stared at that message for hours. It didn't feel right. I always bought in small amounts, never more than 2 ounces. A pound was a whole different level, riskier, harder to move. But if I pulled it off, I could flip it and cover almost a whole semester's tuition. The timing was crazy too. My financial aid hadn't come through yet, and my account was already on hold. I messaged him back, asked if he could break it up into smaller packages. He said no. Said he couldn't risk mailing that much. Too bulky. Too much exposure. He wanted to do it in person. That stopped me cold. We had never even mentioned the idea of meeting face to face. I asked where. He said behind a closed-down shopping plaza about 10 miles from campus. Midnight. Said he'd be in a silver Toyota with tinted windows. Alone. The whole thing sounded like a setup. I almost said no, but I couldn't stop thinking about the profit. I did the math. If I sold at dorm prices, I'd clear nearly $2,000 easy, maybe more if I stretched it. That would solve so many problems. I waited a day before answering. I walked around campus thinking about it. Kept checking the weather, crime reports, traffic cams. I even biked past the plaza during the day. It was exactly what he said. Totally abandoned. Weeds growing through the cracks in the parking lot. Broken windows on the stores. Not a soul around. No cameras that I could see. No homeless camps either. Just empty. I took a video of the lot and showed it to my roommate. I didn't tell him why, just said I was thinking of filming something there. When I finally agreed, I made up a fake errand so my roommate wouldn't ask too many questions. I told him I had to meet someone for a book sale. I didn't tell him where or when, just that I might be back late. He shrugged it off. He was used to me dipping out randomly. The day of the meeting, I prepped like crazy. Wore gloves, dressed in plain black, no logos. Turned off my phone and left it at home. Used a burner for messages. Borrowed my roommate's car without asking. Just left a note saying I'd bring it back with a full tank. Drove out early, parked 2 blocks away from the lot, and walked the rest on foot. Brought the cash in a Ziploc tucked inside my sock. I didn't carry a weapon, which I think about a lot now. I don't own one. Closest thing I had was a screwdriver, but I left it behind. I figured if things went bad, a tool wouldn't help much anyway. It was almost midnight when I got to the lot. The sky was overcast, no moon, barely any streetlights. I stood near a busted lamppost and waited. Every sound felt too loud. My footsteps, the wind, even the slight crackle of wrappers underfoot. At 12:08, a silver Toyota rolled in from the far side of the lot. It moved slow, real slow, lights off. It stopped about 30 feet from me, engine idling. The windows were pitch black. Nothing moved inside. I didn't approach right away. I stood still for at least a minute. My hands were sweating through the gloves. Finally, the driver's side door cracked open. A man stepped out. Medium build, wearing a hoodie pulled low. I couldn't see his face. He stood by the car but didn't say anything. Just nodded once. I walked forward, stopping 10 feet short. I said, "You Green Phoenix?" He didn't answer. Just looked at me for a second, then popped the trunk. I drove to the shopping center with $800 cash hidden in my backpack, tucked behind a stack of notebook paper to keep it from bulging. I didn't bring anything else except my student ID and an old prepaid phone I'd wiped earlier. The lot was even darker than before. One overhead light near the entrance flickered every few seconds. There was one car already parked at the far end, silver, low to the ground, with tinted windows. No plates. I stayed in my car for a minute, just watching, then got out and walked slowly across the cracked pavement. A guy stepped out, hoodie up, head down. He looked younger than I expected. Could have been 20, maybe even my age. Slim build, pale face, twitchy movements. Right away, I knew something was off. This wasn't the guy from the old photos Green Phoenix had posted online. Those showed an older man with a beard. This kid had a baby face and acne scars. He didn't say hi, just said, "You got the money?" I nodded and said, "Yeah, 800. He squinted at me. "No, it's 1,500 now. Delivery fee. Gas money. This ain't charity." I stared at him. That wasn't the deal. He shrugged, stepped closer. "Deals change. You still want it or not?" I turned halfway toward my car. "Nah, man, I'm out." That's when his tone shifted. He raised his voice. "You think you can waste my time? Come all the way here and flake? You owe me." I didn't respond. I just kept walking. My car was 30 feet away. As I reached into my pocket for the keys, I heard another engine. A second car pulled into the lot, dark blue or black, lights off. It stopped right behind my car, boxing me in. Doors opened. 2 more guys stepped out, both bigger than the first, both holding baseball bats. They didn't say a word. Just started walking toward me, calm and steady. The guy in the hoodie circled to my side, still talking. "You thought this was a game? You thought we were friends?" He was close enough that I could smell sweat and something sour, maybe booze. I took one step back, then another. But it was too late. I tried to run but didn't get far. One of the guys grabbed my hoodie from behind and yanked me down. I hit the pavement hard, face scraping on the asphalt. Before I could push myself up, the first bat landed on my leg. I screamed. Another hit followed, then another. They knocked the backpack off my shoulders and tore it open. Bills flew out and scattered in the wind. Someone kicked me in the side, hard, and I heard something pop. I couldn't breathe for a second. While I lay there gasping, one of them stomped on my phone, then picked up my wallet. They flipped through it quickly, grabbing the cards. "Pins," one of them said, pressing the bat against my chest. "Now," I told them. I didn't even hesitate. I gave them every code I could remember. My checking account, my credit card, even my school refund account. They forced me to unlock my phone and log into my banking apps. I could see them transferring money, screenshotting info. Another kick. Then they started pulling my shoes off. "Got anything else?" one said. I shook my head. One of them leaned in and said, "You scream or tell anyone, we'll come back." Then they threw a plastic shopping bag at my face. It hit me, open slightly. I could see something green inside. "Here's your product," the hoodie guy said, and all three laughed. They got into the cars and peeled out, tires squealing. I rolled over onto my side, coughing, ribs on fire. My fingers were shaking too badly to dial at first, but I finally got through to 911. I didn't say much, just, "I was attacked. Parking lot. I think I'm dying." When the paramedics came, I was barely conscious. They kept asking what happened, if I knew the attackers, if it was gang-related. I didn't say much. I didn't lie, but I didn't tell the full truth either. In the ambulance, one of them opened the plastic bag. "You bought this?" he asked. Inside was shredded lettuce, crushed oregano, and maybe a little parsley. Not even good fake weed. Just kitchen scraps. The hospital kept me for 4 days. 2 broken ribs, a concussion, and a dislocated shoulder. They said I was lucky nothing internal got ruptured. I didn't feel lucky. My bank account had been cleaned out. Every card maxed. Every savings account drained. I had nothing left. I couldn't pay tuition, and my dorm access got suspended within a week of getting out. No warning. Just a locked door and a note from the housing office. The police talked to me once. I told them most of what happened, minus the drug details. Didn't matter. They said without plates, no cameras, no real description, there wasn't much they could do. I asked about tracking the phone, but by then the number had been disconnected and the device wiped. I filed a report, but I never heard back. I dropped out of school a few weeks later. Tried to move back home, but my parents didn't really understand what had happened. I told them I was mugged. They thought I was just being reckless. I got a job at a warehouse packing boxes and tried not to think about it. A few months later, I checked the darknet site again out of morbid curiosity. The Green Phoenix account was gone. Not banned, just vanished. No warning, no explanation. I searched Reddit and found a thread about similar scams. Dozens of posts. Kids from schools all over the country. Same pattern. Reliable vendor, small trust-building orders, then a bulk offer with a personal meetup. Everyone ended the same. Robbery, assault, total financial wipeout. One post described my story almost exactly. Same abandoned mall. Same bait price. Same delivery fee change. Different usernames, different cities. But it was the same playbook. That's when it clicked. They weren't just dealers. They were professionals running a full-scale scam operation. They knew how to build a profile, how to act trustworthy, how to pick the right victim. College kids too scared or embarrassed to call the cops. people like me. Now, every time I hear someone talk about making easy money, I think about that parking lot, about the sound of bats hitting pavement, about how fast trust turns into violence. I learned too late. If someone changes the terms of a deal at the last minute, walk away. Always walk away. It was spring 2020, and I was stuck at home with my parents during the first lockdown. I was 17 and already having a hard time with anxiety and depression before COVID started. The isolation made everything worse. No school, no friends, no basketball practice. Just long Zoom classes and being in the same small house with my parents every day. They both worked from home and argued a lot about bills, groceries, job security. It got loud sometimes. I tried staying out of their way by staying in my room. I'd keep my webcam off during class, sit in bed, scroll through my phone for hours pretending to take notes. Mostly I just felt like I was wasting time and wasting space. I stopped answering messages from school friends. After a while, they stopped sending them. Some teachers called my name during class, but I never unmuted. Eventually, they stopped trying too. I started sleeping until noon, then staying up all night. Some nights I'd lie on the floor with the lights off, headphones in, staring at nothing. I didn't even cry. It was like I'd dried up inside. There was this heavy silence in my head all the time. One night, probably around 2 a.m., I was searching random stuff online about depression. Not looking for help exactly, just trying to understand if what I was feeling was even real. That's when I found this forum called Understanding Souls. It looked different from other mental health sites. The posts didn't have cheesy motivational quotes or smiley emojis. Just people saying real things. Painful stuff, hopeless stuff. No one judged them. No one said, just think positive, or you should go outside more. They just listened. I read for hours, going from thread to thread. Some people talked about feeling invisible. Others said they wanted to disappear. The scary part was I understood every word, but instead of making me feel worse, it was almost calming. Like I wasn't alone for once. I made an account that night, username, Hollow Shadow. I didn't post anything at first, just kept reading. After a few days, I replied to someone's post. They were saying they didn't see the point of trying anymore. I wrote something like, I feel the same. Every day feels like I'm already dead. Within an hour, I got responses. Kind ones. Not fake sounding. One person, Dr. Kindness, replied with a long message. They said they'd been where I was, and that there was nothing wrong with feeling like this. Another user, Peaceful Guide, wrote back too. They said my pain made sense, that I wasn't broken, just overwhelmed. I remember staring at the screen for a long time. No one had ever said it was okay to feel that way. I started going back every night. I stopped scrolling TikTok and just logged into Understanding Souls. Dr. Kindness and Peaceful Guide always replied when I posted. Sometimes others did too. But those two were always there. They never told me to get therapy or talk to my parents. They just listened. They wrote things like, you're carrying too much on your own, or it makes sense that you feel this way given your situation. They said it without pity, just facts. I didn't tell anyone in my life about the forum. I didn't want to ruin it. It felt like the only place that didn't treat me like I was either a problem or an inconvenience. After a week or so, I started posting longer messages. I wrote about how useless I felt, how I couldn't imagine a future, how it seemed like every day was just repeating. Dr. Kindness responded with advice on how to ground myself, like using cold water or noticing 5 things in the room. Peaceful Guide talked about routines and how certain foods could affect mood. I didn't think they'd help, but I tried a few things anyway. Cut down on sugar. Went for a walk once late at night. I started to feel like maybe someone out there actually gave a damn if I was alive. They told me I was smart, that my feelings were deep, not broken. They said I had potential, that I noticed things most people didn't. They never sounded fake. It was weird how fast I got attached to them. They always replied fast, even when I posted in the middle of the night. One time I didn't log in for a full day, and when I came back, both of them had messaged me directly, asking if I was okay. My heart actually jumped when I saw that. No one in my real life had checked on me like that in months. I started organizing my day around the forum. I'd wake up, eat a snack, then go straight into reading and posting. My parents stopped asking if I was doing schoolwork. They were too busy arguing about mortgage payments. I barely left my room. I didn't even feel like I was in lockdown anymore. It was more like I'd moved into this other world, this quiet space where people saw me. I started keeping a notebook where I'd write down quotes from Dr. Kindness and Peaceful Guide. Stuff like, pain is information, not weakness. I underlined that one twice. After a while, they suggested more things. A book list, a few breathing techniques, guided meditation videos on YouTube. One of them told me to try putting my phone away for an hour and just write whatever came to mind. I actually did it once. Wrote 3 pages. I didn't even know I had that much to say. I didn't show anyone, obviously, but it felt different from school assignments. More real. More like I was figuring something out. They made me feel like I mattered, like I wasn't just wasting oxygen in my parents' house. One night, I posted something more raw than usual. I said I'd thought about disappearing for good, that it wouldn't make a difference. Within minutes, Dr. Kindness replied. They said they understood, but also that I didn't need to rush to any decisions. Let's figure this out together, they wrote. Peaceful Guide sent a link to a breathing video and told me to watch it twice, then reply. Don't go quiet on us, they added. I watched the video. I didn't like it much, but I replied anyway. Just said, still here. Peaceful Guide replied with a smile emoji and said, that's enough for tonight. After a few weeks, the tone of the conversations on the forum shifted. It was subtle at first. Dr. Kindness started asking more personal questions. Not just how I felt, but what my parents were like. Were they supportive? Did I ever feel like I was a burden to them? I didn't think much of it at the time. I told the truth. They weren't abusive, but they didn't really understand me. They were stressed, distracted, always arguing. Dr. Kindness replied that it was common for parents to be emotionally unavailable. Peaceful Guide added, sometimes love just isn't enough. I started seeing posts from other members about ending their pain. Some shared long goodbye letters. The responses weren't horrified. They were respectful, almost admiring. One post read, she finally found peace, and got over 50 upvotes. I mentioned in one post that the conversations were making me uneasy, that some of it felt too dark. Dr. Kindness replied quickly. Fear is natural, they wrote. It means you're still fighting, but knowledge is power. Understanding all your options is not the same as choosing one. They kept the language vague, but linked articles about rational decision-making and personal control over suffering. Peaceful Guide chimed in with something like, you're not broken for wanting to stop hurting. Then the private messages started. At first, they were like normal support, asking how I was coping. But then they started referencing specific methods. If things ever got too much, they said, there are peaceful ways, safe ways, no more pain. I kept reading the messages, even though part of me didn't want to. I wasn't sure why. Maybe I just wanted to feel close to someone. Maybe it was curiosity. Dr. Kindness started explaining how to prepare, in technical terms. Items, timing, what to avoid. They said things like, "It's important to be sure," and "You deserve dignity and peace, not panic and failure." I didn't tell anyone. I felt ashamed, but also drawn in. Like someone was finally giving me clear answers instead of just saying, "Hang in there." Peaceful Guide sent me videos. Calm-looking people speaking softly about how they planned their last day. One said, "I'm doing this because I'm tired, not because I hate life." It stuck with me. I watched it twice. Then another user posted a timeline, when they'd say goodbye, what song they'd play, how they'd position their body. The comments were full of support. "You're so brave. We're with you." I should have felt alarmed, but I didn't. I felt like I was being let into something secret and serious. I started gathering things, not because I was sure I'd go through with it, but just in case. Dr. Kindness said preparation itself was a form of healing. They suggested I write goodbye letters. Even if you never send them, it helps clarify what matters, they said. I wrote 3. One for my parents, one for my younger brother, one to no one in particular. I left them in a folder on my laptop. I chose a date, 2 weeks out. It gave me time to think. I didn't mark it on a calendar, just remembered it. I went through my days feeling like I had a secret exit, that maybe I wasn't trapped anymore, that the pressure could finally stop. I stopped brushing my teeth. I didn't reply to messages. I told myself it was because soon none of it would matter. The night finally came. My parents had gone to bed after another argument. I sat on my bed with the things I'd collected beside me. My laptop was open. One tab with the forum. One tab with a goodbye message I hadn't posted yet. My room was quiet, just the low hum of the fridge through the wall. I didn't cry. I felt blank. Just going through the checklist like it wasn't real. But then I looked at the door. Thought about my brother waking up and coming in. He was only 10. He still knocked on my door sometimes, asking if I wanted to play a game or help him with math. I imagined his face if he found me. That stopped everything. I couldn't breathe. I pushed the stuff off the bed and stood up. I didn't know what to do. I started pacing, then opened my phone and typed suicide prevention. I called the first number I saw. It was a hotline. A woman answered. Her voice wasn't fake sounding, just steady. She asked if I was in danger. I said, maybe. Then I just told her everything. About the forum, about the messages, about the date. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she said, "You've been targeted. These people knew what they were doing." That shook me. Targeted. Like I was prey. She stayed on the phone while I deleted the forum account. I erased the messages. I deleted the folder. Then I walked into my parents' room. They looked confused, half asleep. I just said, "I need help." My dad sat up. My mom asked what happened. I told them most of it. Not everything, but enough. We didn't argue. We just sat there. I think they finally saw how bad it had gotten. They found me a therapist. A real one. No vague advice, no secret messages. Just someone who listened and helped me sort out the mess in my head. It wasn't instant. Nothing fixed overnight. But it was real. I started going twice a week. Sometimes I didn't say much. Other times I couldn't stop talking. Slowly, the noise in my head got quieter. I even started answering texts again. My brother came in one day and said, "You haven't been in bed all day. That's cool." I laughed. A few months later, I read an article online. The forum had been linked to several teenage suicides across the country. Parents had tried to report it for years. The FBI finally shut it down. But the article said the admins just moved to new sites under different names. Same language, same tactics, same usernames sometimes. It made me sick. I could have been one of those stories. Some kid with a smiling school photo, gone for no reason, no warning signs. But I wasn't. I was still here. I still had bad days. But now I knew what real help looked like. It wasn't someone telling you it's okay to give up. It was someone sitting with you in the dark and helping you wait for morning. It started as a class assignment. I was finishing my last year at journalism school and needed a hard-hitting story for my investigative reporting seminar. Most of my classmates were writing about labor unions, local housing issues, or climate stuff. My professor, though, said if I wanted to stand out, I should look into financial fraud. He tossed out a few names, but one stuck: Richard Blake. I'd never heard of him before, but apparently he was a financial advisor in Chicago who disappeared in 2020 after stealing close to $12 million from his clients. The victims got some media attention, mostly retirees, small business owners, people who trusted him. But no one ever found him. It was like he vanished. That intrigued me. I started where you'd expect: court records, archived articles, SEC filings. I spent nights scrolling through old news reports, downloading legal documents from Pacer, and highlighting anything that felt off. The thing that stood out right away was how prepared Blake had been. Months before the investigation even began, he started offloading assets, closing accounts, liquidating properties. It wasn't impulsive. He'd sold one of his lakefront houses just 2 weeks before the FBI got involved, transferred the money through shell companies, and moved everything into crypto. I mapped it out on my wall with sticky notes and red string, like some cliché crime show. But it helped. I tracked down his ex-wife through a lead I found buried in a divorce settlement summary. She didn't say much, but she was bitter. Not just about the money, but the way he manipulated people. What stood out most from our short call was when she mentioned that, starting in late 2019, he began taking Spanish lessons. She found travel guides to South America in his suitcase, and browser history showing searches like countries with no extradition treaty US and citizenship through investment Paraguay. That's when I realized he hadn't just fled. He planned his exit years in advance. I spent the next few weeks digging deeper. I ran every email address, alias, and business name I could find through public databases and old leaks. I found a string of wire transfers going to accounts in Mexico and Belize. Small amounts, $5,000 here, $8,000 there, but consistent. Enough to keep someone living modestly, or to build a new life somewhere no one would look. I scrolled through forums for expats, read posts about Americans living off-grid in Central America, and kept coming across names that sounded vaguely familiar. Then I hit on something. A photo from a charity gala in Mexico City in 2021. It was buried in a Facebook album with hundreds of photos from a local event planner. One man in the background, arm around a politician, holding a drink, looked almost exactly like Blake. 10 years older, maybe, with a beard. But the eyes were the same. I reverse-searched the image and found more. Snapshots from fundraisers, beach cleanups, even an adoption center ribbon cutting in Guatemala. In all of them, he was never the center of attention, but always there, just outside the spotlight, always smiling. The charity angle didn't make sense at first. Blake had no history of philanthropy. If anything, he was known for flaunting wealth. Exotic cars, vacations to Mykonos, private clubs. But in these photos, he was shaking hands with local officials, dressed casually, and seemed to be heavily involved in youth-oriented organizations. I pulled up the names of the charities from the banners and logos in the background. Most were small NGOs focused on housing, education, and support for homeless kids or orphans. I began reaching out. I sent polite emails posing as a student journalist researching international youth outreach. Some didn't respond. A few did, cautiously. One man from a small nonprofit in Oaxaca remembered Ricardo, a generous donor who always paid in cash and avoided cameras. Another in Antigua, Guatemala, said their visitor, Rich, had promised to build a dormitory for teenage boys who'd aged out of the system. He said he wanted to give back, the woman told me on a WhatsApp call. But it felt more like observation. He watched them a lot, always asking about their stories, their families, if they had anyone back home. That word, observation, stuck with me. Another woman, this time from a youth shelter outside Guatemala City, agreed to talk. We spoke over video chat. She described a man with an American accent who'd come by multiple times in 2022, sometimes alone, sometimes with local police officers or businessmen. Said he had documents showing he was forming a new initiative for runaway support. He wanted to fund counseling, meals, schooling. But he always asked for private interviews with the teens, especially the boys. She said no, of course. But once, she saw him talking alone with a 14-year-old near the courtyard. When she walked over, the boy looked down, and the man walked away quickly. He said he just wanted to learn about trauma, she told me. But he kept using strange phrases. He asked if some of the boys had disappeared before. Like, if they came back after leaving. It gave me a bad feeling. I asked if she had a photo. She didn't, but one of her co-workers had saved a security cam still after that visit, just in case. She emailed it to me. It was grainy, taken at night, but the man walking out of the building, tall, white, slight limp on his left leg, matched other photos I had. He was carrying a folder under one arm and looking directly at the camera. I compared it to a DMV image from Blake's driver's license. It was him. This was no longer just a story about a fraudster hiding out in paradise. Something else was going on. The way people described him, the questions he asked, the pattern of visiting shelters for vulnerable youth. It felt off. I couldn't shake it. I started mapping his appearances, noting the timeline. He moved around a lot. Mexico City in 2021, then Belize, then rural Guatemala. Every time, his name changed slightly. Rick, Ricardo, Rich. And always the same organizations. Shelters, youth centers, recovery homes. I booked a one-way ticket to Guatemala City. I stayed in a cheap guest house near the edge of Guatemala City, trying to keep a low profile. It wasn't a tourist area. Bare concrete buildings, narrow streets, dogs barking at all hours. My room had a small fan and a weak lock on the door. Every night I backed up my notes on a password-protected drive and hid it under the mattress. During the day, I took the local buses, trying to blend in. I used basic Spanish phrases to get by, never said I was a journalist. Just a student working on a school project. Using Google Translate, I started digging through local Facebook groups, mostly written in slang-heavy Spanish. The kind you don't get taught in classes. I saw dozens of posts about missing teens, many of them boys between 13 and 17. A few posts had blurry photos. One caught my eye. A man in sunglasses standing outside a schoolyard, surrounded by kids. The caption said he'd offered modeling contracts to some girls after school. The comments were filled with angry replies and crying emojis. It was a few months old. I zoomed in. The man's posture, his nose, even the way he tilted his head. It looked like Blake. I messaged the woman who posted it. Her name was Jessica. She replied the next day. Her cousin had gone missing that week. A 15-year-old boy named Luis. Last seen talking to two American men outside a small youth center. They offered him a job doing tech work in Belize. He never came home. Jessica said there were other stories like that. Girls and boys approached by foreigners, promised work in hotels or modeling gigs. Some were never seen again. Others came back weeks later, quiet, withdrawn, with bruises or signs of abuse. The deeper I went, the more sick I felt. I tracked down local news articles with the help of an online translator. Many had vague headlines. Teen missing in Zone 18. Foreign man questioned by police. But reading between the lines, the pattern was clear. People were being recruited, moved across borders, and used. I began cross-referencing dates, locations, and charity events Blake had attended. Several matched the timeline of disappearances. I made a spreadsheet, color-coded by city and year. His path traced directly through zones with the highest missing youth cases. One night, walking back to my room, I noticed a white pickup truck parked across the street. Two men sat inside. They weren't locals. They didn't look at me, but I could tell they were watching. I changed my route the next day. I sent everything I'd found to a burner email I'd made just for this project. I also backed it up to a USB drive and mailed it to my classmate back home, just in case something happened. That's when I knew I was in over my head. I found an old news clip online, a press conference from 2021, where an FBI agent spoke briefly about Blake's fraud case. I tracked him down through LinkedIn. I messaged him, attaching a few pieces of my research and photos. At first, he ignored me. Then, after 3 days, he replied, "Call me. Now." He gave me a number. I used a phone at an internet cafe. He was sharp, direct. At first, skeptical. He asked how I'd found the photos, who I was. But when I started explaining the charity links and the local posts about missing teens, his tone changed. I sent him everything. The spreadsheet, the interviews, the still image from the shelter. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "You need to stop. You're walking into a live investigation. We've had eyes on this guy for over a year. You could ruin months of work." I froze. Is he dangerous? Yes. And not just him. He didn't give specifics, but made it clear this wasn't just about stolen money. Blake was part of something bigger. A network. A system that preyed on vulnerable kids in places with little law enforcement oversight. He asked where I was staying, then told me to leave Guatemala within 48 hours. "You're not safe there," he said. "They watch people." I told him I still had more info, more leads. He said to send it all to a secure Dropbox he gave me. Then delete everything from my devices. No exceptions. He thanked me. Said my work might have helped push things forward, but I needed to disappear. The next morning, someone knocked on my door around 6 a.m. I didn't answer. Just packed my things, slipped out the back stairwell, and took a taxi to the airport. I paid cash. My hands shook going through security. Every tall man with sunglasses made my stomach twist. I didn't feel safe until the plane took off. Back in Chicago, I got a call 2 weeks later. The same agent. He said they'd made arrests. Not just Blake, but 2 others tied to a child trafficking ring. My notes had helped them confirm several locations they'd been unsure about. Local police in Guatemala had coordinated with U.S. authorities to intercept them at a warehouse where 2 teenagers were being held. Blake had fake passports, hard drives, and cash on him. He tried to bribe the officers. The news broke fast. CNN ran a piece on it. They called him the Predator Financier. Articles showed his mugshot. Older now, with a scar on his forehead. Multiple charges, including trafficking, child exploitation, fraud, and conspiracy. Prosecutors were pushing for life sentences. The FBI never used my name publicly, but I got an encrypted email from one of the international crimes investigators. He said my research filled in gaps they couldn't cover through official means. They'd spent years trying to crack this network. My digging, small as it was, had helped map out Blake's operation. My professor called me the next week, said he'd known something bigger might be buried in the Blake story. That's why he pointed me toward it. He said, "Sometimes the thread you pull unravels the whole sweater." I still think about the kids, the ones who never came back, the ones who did, changed. Journalism classes don't prepare you for that part. They teach structure, sources, ethics, but not how to sleep after reading first-hand accounts of abuse. Not how to walk away when you know there's more out there. But I also learned something else. Real reporting, the kind that matters, can expose people who hide in plain sight. Blake wore suits, gave speeches, smiled for cameras. And underneath that, he was a predator. I turned in my final paper 2 days before the deadline. 30 pages. Clean, focused, with no names that could put anyone in danger. My professor gave me an A. I didn't ask for a letter of recommendation. I already knew I wouldn't be going into newsroom work. I started looking at jobs in non-profit investigations instead. The kind of work that finds people like Blake before they can disappear again. So when I was 23, I was in my 3rd year of dental school at a state university. Most days started at 7 a.m., and by noon my brain felt like mush. Our professors kept drilling into us how essential it was to get real human teeth for our final practicum. They said plastic models wouldn't cut it, that we needed to understand the different densities, the root shapes, and how tools behaved on actual enamel. The problem was, the school didn't give us enough, maybe half of what was needed, and even those were shared across students. If you wanted to do well, you had to bring your own. The legit medical supply stores sold them, but the prices were stupid, like $35 per tooth. Do the math. 28 types of teeth meant almost $1,000. I was barely keeping it together working evenings at a pizza joint, sometimes skipping meals just to cover rent and textbooks. My classmate Jake mentioned a guy he used last semester. Said the guy was solid, reliable, and cheap. He gave me a contact for someone named Med Supply Pro on an encrypted messaging app. I was hesitant, but Jake swore by him. Said he already passed his practicum thanks to that set. It felt shady, but not illegal exactly. If hospitals and funeral homes were involved, it had to be semi-legit, right? I messaged him that night. Just said I was a dental student looking for a full set. 28 teeth, all types, clean, no damage. He replied in under 5 minutes. Said he could send a full set for $400 and guaranteed professional extraction. When I asked about the source, he told me mortuary staff pulled them out before cremation, with consent from the families. Apparently dental work has to come out anyway to avoid issues with the cremation process. It made sense. I didn't ask more. He sent me 3 photos. Clean white teeth lined in plastic vials with printed labels. UR1, LL6, LR3. All the dental coding was there. The containers looked like what our instructors used. I asked how to pay. He said only crypto. I had a small crypto wallet left over from a classmate who got me into it last year, so I used that. Transferred the money and gave him a P.O. box I had access to through a friend. He said it'd be there tomorrow. No tracking number, no signature required. I didn't sleep well that night, but I kept telling myself it was just medical supply. not drugs or anything. The next afternoon, I checked the P.O. box during lunch. Sure enough, there was a small brown cardboard box, no markings, no return address. The label just said, "Educational Kit," and had my initials handwritten in block letters. It was lighter than I expected. I sat in my car outside the post office and opened it on the passenger seat. Inside was a vacuum-sealed bag with bubble wrap around 3 plastic vials. Each vial had a strip of white tape with the same kind of dental codes I'd seen in the photos. I counted them. All 28, packed tight. They looked just like the ones in the photos. No blood, no damage, nothing that would set off alarms. It was weird how clean they were. Too clean, maybe. I wrapped them back up and put the package in my backpack under my anatomy textbook. The next few days, I didn't think much about it. I used a few of the teeth for my prep models, and everything seemed fine. Our lab assistant even complimented my Class 2 cavity prep on tooth number 14. That night, Jake messaged me asking if I got my stuff. I said yeah, and thanked him again. He just sent back a thumbs up. Then about 4 days later, something weird happened. I got a message from Med Supply Pro. It wasn't a follow-up or a thank you. It was just one line. Need more soon? I stared at it for a few seconds. I hadn't mentioned needing more, and I hadn't reached out since the first deal. I replied, "Not right now, thanks." He sent a smiley face. Not the emoji, just typed it out like this. I didn't answer. The next morning I noticed my front door mail slot had something jammed in it. I live in a shared rental with 2 other guys, and we have a locked mailbox outside, so we never use the slot. I pulled it out. It was a thick white envelope, taped shut. No name on it. Inside were 2 teeth in a Ziploc bag, no labels, just loose. I held them up to the light. 1 molar, 1 canine. Both still had dried gum tissue around the roots. Not cleaned, not stored properly. I wrapped them in toilet paper and flushed them. My hands were shaking a little, but I told myself someone was messing with me. Maybe Jake was pulling a prank. I didn't say anything to my roommates. I didn't message Med Supply Pro. I figured it'd be smarter to just leave it alone. A couple more days passed, nothing else showed up. I stayed busy with clinic hours and didn't use any more of the teeth. They stayed in my drawer at school in the locker they assigned us. Then, on Sunday night, around 10 p.m., I heard a knock at the back door. It was raining. Not storming, just light drizzle. The back door opens into the shared laundry room. Nobody uses it after dark. Too many bugs, and the motion light is broken. I froze in the living room. My roommates weren't home. I waited. Nothing. Just that one knock. Not even a second try. I turned off the TV and walked back slowly, barefoot on the tile. When I looked through the small window in the door, I saw nothing. Just the darkness and a bit of my own reflection. I turned on the kitchen light so it would cast more into the laundry room through the glass. Still nothing. Then I noticed something at the bottom of the door. A small package. Not an envelope this time, just a clear bag. Sitting flat against the door like it had been pushed through the small gap at the bottom. I opened the door slowly. The bag was wet from the rain, but sealed. Inside was another tooth. Just one this time. A lower incisor by the looks of it. No label, no cleaning. Still had red tissue along the root. The bag also had a scrap of paper inside. It was folded once, already damp. I brought it in under the kitchen light and opened it. Just 4 words, written in blue ink in shaky handwriting. You forgot this one. The teeth looked perfect, and exactly what I needed for my exams. I used them in every lab session, cavity preps, crown fittings, root canals. No one questioned them. They passed inspection. I remember holding one premolar with the tweezers and thinking how clean the root was, like it had never even sat in a mouth. I didn't care at the time. I just wanted to pass. My grades shot up. I scored near the top of the class on our practicals. Professor said my precision improved. I didn't say a word about the source. Neither did Jake. About a month later, Med Supply Pro messaged me again. Good results? Want to earn extra? I didn't answer at first. He sent another message a day later. We pay $150 per tooth. Just collect extras from clinic. I worked part-time at a dental clinic, helping clean and sterilize tools. Sometimes patients had extractions, molars, wisdoms. Most got thrown out. Still, the idea of collecting them for someone like him felt wrong. I told him no. He replied with a shrug emoji and wrote, $70 each. Easy money. No one checks. I ignored it. He kept going. $100 per tooth. Said he'd pay up front. Then he started sending pictures, trays full of teeth, then small boxes with jawbone halves, vertebrae. One was a plastic bin with several human ribs. No labels, just dumped in like meat. Then came organs, kidneys, a liver, even what looked like an eyeball in a jar. They were too fresh. No embalming, no discoloration. This wasn't old cadaver material. It was something else. The quantities were off too. Dozens of matched sets. Nobody would have that much access unless they were doing something illegal. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the incisor he left on my back porch. You forgot this one. It had to be him. I hadn't told anyone where I lived. There were no cameras at the back entrance. I asked Jake again about him, but Jake just said he didn't want to get involved anymore. I could tell he regretted even mentioning the contact. I started looking into it. I dug through old Reddit threads, dark web forums, anything I could find with the name Med Supply Pro. Nothing direct, but after a few nights, I got a hit. Someone on a closed forum mentioned a guy named Marcus who sold cold-grade medical samples. I searched Marcus plus teeth plus my city. I came across a local obituary database, not related to him, but one of the guestbook comments was signed by a Marcus Webb. The name stuck. I ran it through a public records site. There was a Marcus Webb working nights at the county morgue 2 miles from the university hospital. I sat on it for a day. Then I messaged him again. Is your name Marcus Webb? He read it but didn't reply. I waited. Then 5 minutes later, be careful what you type. That was all. No emojis, no jokes. 10 minutes later, he sent another message. You're in deeper than you think. I have every message, every payment. You break this, I break you. I didn't reply. He sent one more message. You think you're clean? You bought 28 teeth, paid in crypto, used them, and passed your exam. You're already part of this. Might as well benefit. Then he sent a photo of me, sitting in my car outside the post office. The day I picked up the first package. The photo was taken from across the street. Not a security camera, angled and focused. Someone was watching. That same night, he sent a link. Encrypted site, password protected. I opened it. Medical grade layout. Options to purchase. Femurs, fibulas, jaw sets, lung tissue, all itemized. Prices next to each. Some were over $5,000. Research institutions welcome, the site read. Some items marked rush available. He messaged again. Our $10K a month. You just collect. No questions. I knew I had to stop it. I couldn't pretend anymore. I backed up all our messages, screenshots of the photos, the payment history from my crypto wallet. I copied the URL and the site source code into a doc. I emailed the FBI Cybercrime Division through their public tip line and gave them my number. They responded in less than 24 hours. 2 agents came to my apartment. I showed them everything. They already had a case open on Marcus Webb. He was on their radar, but they hadn't connected the dental angle yet. I signed a cooperation agreement. They took my phone for imaging and told me not to engage with him again. They traced the payments, the message logs, and the website host. Over the next few weeks, they raided 4 locations across 3 states. Marcus was arrested at the morgue, caught in the act of packaging tissue into a cooler. Along with him, 12 others were indicted, mostly morgue workers, 1 funeral director, and a former EMT. They'd been targeting homeless individuals, unclaimed bodies, and forging disposal paperwork. Selling parts to shady institutions, universities that looked the other way, and even private collectors. Some of the remains were shipped overseas. I was called to testify during the trial. I sat in the courtroom while Marcus stared straight ahead, no expression. The prosecutor played the recordings, showed the jury the screenshots. When they read out the sentences, I didn't feel relief, just numb. He got 15 years in federal prison. Others got less. But the entire network was exposed. Back at school, no one knew. I passed my practicum, got my license. But I kept those last 2 teeth, the ones from the mail slot and the back door. I sealed them in a plastic container, marked the date, and locked them away. I never used them. Every once in a while, I think about throwing them out, but I don't. Because every time I look at them, I remember someone died for my grades. Someone who never gave their name. When I was 31, I worked the night shifts as a nurse in the maternity ward at County General. My pay barely covered rent and groceries, and with 2 kids, it felt like drowning. My schedule rotated too much to get a second job, and child support was unpredictable. That hospital was always short-staffed, supplies were late, and some of our monitors looked like they hadn't been calibrated in years. I got used to it, but I hated how many corners we had to cut. Everyone just did what they had to. Dr. Richardson joined us maybe 6 months into that year. He was older than most of the new hires, early 40s maybe. Tall, calm, never raised his voice. He had this polished way of speaking, like he was used to private clinics. No one really understood why he ended up in our broken-down hospital. He didn't bring it up, and we didn't ask. He stayed late a lot, even when his shift ended, and didn't mind covering for someone if they needed to leave. A few of the younger nurses thought he was too polished, like he was hiding something. But he always treated me respectfully, even when I was snapping at people from exhaustion. I didn't have time for gossip. I was focused on surviving the month. It was after a long and rough night. A mother came in from a nearby town. No prenatal visits. Heavy bleeding. We barely saved her and the baby. I was cleaning up, running on no sleep, when Richardson found me in the supply closet counting IV bags. He asked if I was interested in picking up some administrative work off the books. Said he noticed how often I stayed late, how hard I worked, and that he could use someone reliable. I just looked at him. He pulled out a wad of cash from his coat pocket, clean bills, folded neat, and said he'd pay for a couple hours' help here and there. I didn't agree right away. I waited until the next week when my fridge broke and I had to choose between fixing it or paying for both kids' field trip fees. That's when I told him I was in. He didn't give many instructions. Said we'd meet in one of the unused offices near the records room, after most of the staff went home. The first time, it felt harmless. He had a few birth certificates printed out, a couple of hospital intake forms. He told me which lines to adjust. Small things. A date changed from the 8th to the 10th. A time moved 2 hours forward. A signature from a nurse I didn't know swapped out for another. He said insurance companies rejected stuff for dumb reasons, and this just helped families avoid that. I didn't ask too many questions. $200 for something that took 30 minutes? It was more than my whole night shift paid. Richardson always handed me the cash after I was done. No small talk, no records. He never wanted anything personal, never crossed any lines. Just business. We did this maybe twice a week, always late, always in that back office near records. It was cold in there, and the ceiling lights buzzed quietly. The files came in manila folders, no patient names on the outside, just numbers. I asked once if I'd get in trouble if anyone found out. He said the corrections were internal, wouldn't be traced to me, and that I should keep it confidential. Administration has no sense for efficiency, he said. It went like that for about 3 weeks. Sometimes the changes made less sense. A C-section marked as vaginal. A birth date pushed back by 2 months. Once I had to replace a birth certificate with an entirely new one. Richardson said it was an error from a transfer case. Some baby born at a clinic before being brought to us. Again, I didn't press. I just counted the cash afterward and walked home, watching over my shoulder out of habit. One night he had more than usual. 4 full folders. He looked more tired than normal. Dark circles under his eyes. He told me some of the forms were from a backlog of cases that needed cleaning up before the quarterly audit. I nodded and started reviewing them. The handwriting on some of the forms wasn't his. The ink looked older. There were smudges on one of the envelopes like it had been wet. I asked if these were all from County General. He didn't answer right away. They're all linked to our records now, he finally said, without looking at me. I remember one file had a chart with no mother's name, just unknown, and a set of lab results. I was supposed to fill in a name from another form, copy it over, change the time of birth to match a different entry. He stood behind me while I worked, sipping from a paper cup of coffee. He never used the vending machine for it. Always brought his own. Later, I started noticing things around the hospital. Files that used to be on the 3rd shelf of the records room were missing. One nurse mentioned a weird discrepancy on a discharge summary. A baby that was supposedly delivered by Dr. Patel showed up in the computer as one of Richardson's cases. She brushed it off, blamed a computer error. I kept doing the file work, even when it felt off. My son's braces were coming up, and my daughter's school trip deposit was overdue. I told myself I was just fixing typos. The hospital was a mess anyway. What difference did it make if a few forms were shuffled around? One Thursday night I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. Just said, "Room 412, come alone." I almost ignored it, but then Richardson called my cell a minute later. "It's me," he said. "I left something urgent in 412. Meet me there instead of the office." Room 412 was down the west wing, near pediatrics, a place we rarely used during night shift. Most of that hallway was dark. As I walked down, the lights overhead flickered. The door to 412 was open slightly. I pushed it slowly, trying not to make any sound. Inside, the lights were off, but moonlight came through the window. Something was covered on the bed with a hospital sheet. I turned on the bedside lamp. The sheet on the bed didn't move. I stood still for a few seconds, listening. Nothing but the faint hum of the building. I stepped closer and pulled the sheet back just enough to see. It wasn't a patient. It was a file folder and a sealed cooler, like the kind we use for organ transport. The folder had my name on it. Inside were copies of all the documents I'd altered over the last 2 months. Birth certificates, intake forms, discharge summaries, all with my handwriting. My stomach dropped. Behind me, the door clicked shut. Richardson stood there, arms crossed. "I had to make sure you were all in," he said. "No backing out." That's when he told me everything. The babies we'd marked as stillborn were alive. He had contacts, rich families, people from out of state, who paid for newborns, no questions asked. Most couldn't adopt legally for various reasons: past legal issues, age, immigration status. Some just didn't want the red tape. He pulled out his phone and opened an app. It looked like an encrypted marketplace. Listings with ID numbers, medical stats, birth dates, fake names, photos of newborns. Some with notes like, "Blue eyes expected," or "No family history of illness." I stared at it and couldn't move. "They're getting better lives than the system gives them," Richardson said. "You know how foster care ends up for kids. We're helping, and now that you're in, you'll earn more. $500 per file. 2, maybe 3 babies a month." I wanted to say no, but he had everything. Documents, camera footage, even text messages. He knew about my debts, the rent payments I'd skipped, the forged time cards. He made it clear that if I backed out, I'd lose my job and probably end up in jail. I didn't sleep that night. Just stared at the ceiling and counted the hours till morning. After that, things moved fast. Richardson gave me specific cases to monitor. Young mothers alone, women who missed prenatal visits, addicts brought in by ambulance. We'd identify vulnerable patients, and when labor started, he'd step in and take over. The baby would be born healthy, but on paper, it died. I'd handle the death certificate. Sometimes I'd stay with the mother, help sedate her, keep her distracted. Other times, I'd just quietly file the paperwork and make sure no one else touched the chart. The infants were handed off within hours. A private ambulance would arrive, paperwork already in place, and take the baby to a location I was never told. Richardson said the transport team didn't speak English. We never talked about it in the hospital, only at night, behind closed doors. In the first 6 months, we processed 9 babies. I kept the money in a locked box at home, afraid to deposit it. I told myself I was going to stop. But every time something came up, my car broke down, my daughter needed braces, my landlord raised the rent. Richardson made it easy to say yes again. One night, I saw a mother crying in the hallway, sitting in her hospital gown on the floor. I recognized her. She was supposed to have delivered a stillborn that morning. I asked if she needed help, and she looked up with swollen eyes. "I saw her," she said. "She was breathing. I swear to God she was breathing." I froze, nodded like I didn't hear her, and walked away. That night, Richardson didn't mention it. We just did another file. By the end of the year, we'd handled 23 cases. I had over $11,000 in cash. I bought a second-hand car, paid off my credit card, replaced the broken water heater. It all fell apart in April. A young woman, maybe 19, came in alone, high on something. Delivered a baby girl. I did my part, cleaned the record, filed the stillbirth form. But the girl kept asking to see her baby. Richardson told her it wasn't viable, said it had multiple complications. She didn't buy it. The next day she demanded to see the body. Richardson brought in a baby from the nursery. Wrong infant, wrong details. The girl stared at it and said, "Her eyes are brown. Mine were blue. Her father's too. We both got blue eyes." She started screaming. Security had to escort her out. 2 days later, detectives showed up. They asked about stillbirths, about record inconsistencies. The girl had gone to the police. They started pulling files, comparing them. A week later, federal agents raided the hospital. They arrested Richardson in the parking garage. I was taken from my shift in handcuffs. 6 others were arrested too. 2 from records, 1 from pediatrics. The rest from nearby clinics we didn't even know were involved. I sat in a white room with 2 FBI agents for 6 hours. They showed me photos of the babies, birth records, phone logs. I told them everything. Every folder, every delivery, every lie. I signed a deal, reduced sentence in exchange for full cooperation. Richardson got 25 years. He didn't speak during the trial. I got 8. Minimum security. I testified against everyone I knew. Some broke down and confessed. Others swore they were set up. The investigation uncovered adoption rings across 12 states. Judges, doctors, lawyers. Most of the babies were found. 3 never were. I lost my nursing license. My kids live with their aunt. They visit sometimes, but it's different. I'm different. I live under another name now. They moved me through 3 cities before settling me here. I work nights at a warehouse. Keep to myself. Sometimes I still hear the mothers crying in the hallway. I remember their names, the way they looked when I told them, I'm sorry. I thought the money would fix things. I thought I was helping. All I did was destroy lives, one file at a time. When I was 22, I was trying to make it as an actress in LA while raising my 2-year-old son. My days were packed. I worked at a diner on Sunset BLVD, usually from 3 p.m. to 11. On weekends, I did small modeling gigs, fitness catalogs, hair product demos, that sort of thing. It never paid much, but I couldn't say no to anything. My studio apartment in North Hollywood was barely 400 square feet. Just enough space for a mattress on the floor, a pack-and-play for my son, and a second-hand TV. I had to stack dishes in the sink for a day or two sometimes because drying space doubled as my changing table. In early August, Lisa, my manager, called. She always sounded tired, like she'd been running a mile before picking up. She said a new sportswear brand wanted to hire me for a one-day shoot. $800 for 8 hours. It sounded too good, honestly. Usually a half-day gig might pay $200, $300 max. She told me they found me online, liked my look. They wanted someone local, someone real. I didn't ask questions. My rent was due in 6 days, and my tips from the diner barely covered groceries last week. I said yes, and wrote down the address she gave me. Some warehouse near the industrial part of town. I packed my small makeup kit and threw in 2 changes of clothes, even though they said they'd have wardrobe. My son was with a neighbor I trusted. She was an older woman who lived downstairs and loved kids. I left her with 2 packs of apple juice and a note with Lisa's number in case anything happened. I drove the next morning around 8 a.m. The shoot was supposed to start at 9, and traffic was lighter than usual. The location was just south of downtown, where warehouses stack up behind cracked parking lots, and no one walks if they don't have to. The street was mostly empty. The warehouse looked like the others, large, beige, and featureless. But one of the roll-up doors was open slightly, and I saw lighting rigs inside. A black van was parked out front, clean and new, no markings. 2 men were already waiting. They weren't what I expected. Not sleazy, not overly friendly either. One had a beard and wore a Nike hoodie. The other was shorter, stockier, with thick glasses. They introduced themselves as Mark and Chris, said they handled photography and lighting. They were friendly in a kind of casual, half-distracted way. Chris asked if I needed to charge my phone and pointed to a power strip near a folding table with bottled water, granola bars, and a big silver coffee urn. It looked professional enough. I'd been in worse setups. One guy in a garage trying to do edgy swimsuit shots. At least this place had real equipment and didn't smell like weed. Mark asked me a few questions about my past work, how comfortable I was in athletic gear, if I'd ever modeled with motion blur or fitness poses. I told him I'd done a few catalog shoots for local stores. He nodded and took notes on his phone. Chris poured a paper cup of coffee and offered it to me. I wasn't a big coffee drinker, but I was tired, and the room was colder than I expected. I said thanks and sipped it while sitting on a folding chair near the back. The coffee had a strange aftertaste, like metal, but I didn't think much of it. Maybe old pipes or cheap beans. I drank half before setting it on the floor. We waited for the creative director, who they said was running late. Chris busied himself adjusting some cables while Mark opened a laptop and typed quietly. The studio lights weren't on yet. Only the natural light came through high windows, diffused and dusty. I stood to stretch, but something felt off. My legs were heavier than usual. I tried to blink the fog out of my vision, but the edges of the room started to warp. My ears rang, then dulled, like I was underwater. My body didn't move the way it was supposed to. I looked at Mark, and his face was too far away even though he hadn't moved. I tried to say something, but the words got stuck. Chris turned and saw me stumbling. He moved fast. I remember his hands on my shoulders, steadying me. "Whoa, you okay?" I think he said, but his voice was already behind a wall. I tried to back away, but my knees collapsed. The floor came up slow, then fast, then nothing. When I woke up, the first thing I noticed was the smell: rubber, dust, and exhaust. My hands were behind my back, wrists bound tightly with something that dug into my skin when I moved. My head throbbed like someone had cracked it open and stuffed it with cotton. The surface beneath me was hard and vibrating, a metal floor maybe, and the space I was in was moving. It took a few seconds before my eyes adjusted. Thin light came through the back window of a van. I saw it through slits between black plastic that covered most of the inside. I was lying sideways, legs bent awkwardly, knees jammed against a box of some kind. There were no seats back here, just crates, duffel bags, and equipment cases. No one spoke. The engine hummed and tires rolled steady on the road. I tried to shout, but my mouth was dry and my voice barely worked. I could only manage a weak grunt. My shoulders screamed every time I shifted. The van slowed, turned left, then sped up again. I felt the incline as it moved onto a freeway. I couldn't see who was driving. There was a black mesh curtain behind the front seats, blocking the view. My stomach clenched hard. I stayed still, listening to every bump in the road, waiting for anything to change. The drive lasted hours. We went through long stretches of nothing, no signs, no traffic, just winding mountain roads and pine trees leaning in close. I stayed quiet. Every bump in the road made my hands ache, but I didn't move. At some point the van stopped. Doors opened. I was dragged out roughly, then carried. I remember cold air on my face and gravel underfoot. They brought me into a small house, one level, wooden, blinds shut tight. No neighbors in sight. Inside, it smelled like old wood and Lysol. The man who had helped me earlier, tall, clean clothes, no beard, removed his mask and said, "I'm Kevin." He looked like a regular guy, maybe 35. Pressed jeans, gray t-shirt, no visible tattoos. He smiled like this wasn't insane. He sat across from me, hands folded, and started talking like we were old friends. He said he'd been watching me for a while. He knew where I worked, where I lived, even what daycare my son used to go to before I switched babysitters. He pulled out photos, me waiting tables, me walking to my car in the diner parking lot, me holding my son on the stairs of my apartment. He had followed me for months. Then he told me we had met. I didn't remember. He said it was at a coffee shop near the diner, about 3 months back. He had asked if the outlet near my table worked, and I had said yes. I probably didn't even look up, but he remembered every word. He said he couldn't stop thinking about me after that. He believed I had smiled at him in a special way, that there was a connection. That's when he started planning. He said this wasn't about hurting me. He said I just needed to see that we were meant to be together, that the world had kept us apart unfairly, He wanted time. Real time, as he called it. Without distractions or responsibilities. He promised I wouldn't be hurt. But the door to the room locked from the outside. The bedroom he put me in had one window, nailed shut from the outside. A twin bed with clean sheets, a small table, a bathroom with a shower. It could have been a guest room or a rental. He never tied me up inside, but he kept the door locked whenever he wasn't standing right there. The second day, he brought me scrambled eggs and sat on the bed while I ate. He watched me eat like it was a date. On the third day, Kevin said he had contacted my family. He told them I'd been taken by people working for a cartel, that they needed to pay $250,000, or I'd be moved out of state. I could tell he was trying to sound like someone else. He used a fake accent on the call, said things like, "our associates," and "the shipment." But I knew it was him. I recognized his rhythm. He let me call my sister once. He held the phone up and told me to say I was alive, not to cry, and not to ask questions. I said, "I'm okay. Please don't do anything. Just listen to what they tell you." My sister started screaming my name before he ended the call. For the next few days, he brought me food, let me shower, even gave me clean clothes. But he also sat with me for hours, telling me about his life. He used to work for a software company. He lived in Silver Lake. He said his co-workers never understood him, that no one ever really saw him until me. He told me I was the only person who made him feel normal. That's when I realized this wasn't just about money. Kevin wanted me to want him. He needed it to feel mutual. So I changed how I talked. I started saying I remembered him from the coffee shop. I said I had noticed him before, thought he looked smart. I said I never said anything because I was shy. At first, he didn't believe me. He kept testing me, asking what color his shirt was that day, what table he was sitting at. I guessed wrong once. He got quiet and left the room. But the next day, I tried again. I said I used to hope he'd come back and talk to me again. I said I thought about him after that. He started bringing me better food. He gave me a paperback novel and said I should have something to read. On the seventh night, he unlocked the door and didn't close it all the way. I didn't run. I sat on the bed and waited. I think that's when he started to believe me completely. On the 8th morning, I told him we could be together if this ended. I said I needed to see my son, but if he let me go, I wouldn't tell anyone. I said I'd lie. I'd say I ran away because I was stressed. No police, no charges. Just a reset. He looked at me for a long time and asked if I meant it. I nodded. He agreed. He even smiled. He said we'd go back together, that he'd wait while I talked to police and explained everything. I said it made sense to go straight to the station. That way, they'd believe the story. No drama. He drove. I sat in the front seat. He let me roll the window down. The air felt different after so many days locked up. I gave him directions. He seemed calm, like he was proud of how reasonable he was being. We pulled up to the police station around 3 p.m. He parked on the street, and we walked in together. I had to fight the urge to run. I kept my voice flat, told the officer at the front desk my name, and that I needed to clear up a missing person report. The officer looked at Kevin, then at me. I said, "This is Kevin. He helped me." Within seconds, 2 more officers came out. One grabbed my arm gently, guided me aside. The other cuffed Kevin, his face twisted, confused. He didn't fight. He didn't even ask why. He just looked at me as they took him away. They questioned me for hours. My sister showed up. They found the house within a day. The photos, the van, the notes, everything. Kevin was charged with kidnapping, extortion, and false imprisonment. During the trial, They showed emails he'd sent to himself, diary entries, search history. He had been following me for 6 months. He got 18 years. I moved right after. Changed jobs. New apartment. I still live in the same city, but I never take the same route twice. I check every mirror. I lock every door. And I haven't been back to that coffee shop since. It happened last summer when I was living in a small border town about 30 miles from Mexico. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone, and most of the businesses are half shuttered by noon. The economy had been bad for years. A few dusty factories still ran on skeleton crews, and people mostly got by through side gigs, odd jobs, or whatever they could carry across the border without getting caught. I was working night shifts at a gas station, saving what I could, and spending most days half asleep or drinking weak coffee at the diner with my friend Tony. Tony was the kind of guy who never sat still for long. He was always trying something, selling old electronics, washing cars, moving furniture. He wasn't dumb, just impatient. He lived with his grandmother in a tiny one-story place behind the grocery store. He helped pay the rent and keep the lights on, and even though he acted tough, he'd run home every day after work to check if she needed anything. That summer, he told me he found a new gig, distributing flyers. $50 a day just to put them on windshields, poles, fences, anywhere people would see them. He said it was for some fancy new restaurant opening up soon. I didn't think much of it. We were both used to weird jobs that didn't ask questions. Tony showed me the flyers one morning over breakfast. They looked sharp. Thick paper, glossy finish, clean design. It had a photo of a dimly lit restaurant with velvet curtains and a line of women in elegant black dresses holding menus. Big bold letters across the top. Exclusive dining experience, now hiring. The rest was all marketing fluff. It said they were looking for young, motivated women for specialized menu service, and mentioned competitive wages, travel benefits, and family compensation plans. No name, no address, just a phone number printed on the bottom with a weird area code I didn't recognize. I asked Tony if he met the guy who gave him the job, and he said yeah. A tall, skinny guy in his 40s, well-dressed, smelled like cologne. Drove a black BMW with tinted windows. He didn't say much, Tony told me. Just gave me a stack of flyers and paid in cash. Said to focus on the neighborhoods by the train tracks. That part stuck in my head. That area wasn't dangerous exactly, but it was poor, run down. Lot of families there barely keeping it together. Single moms, kids without shoes, people who didn't speak English. I asked why the guy wanted to target those places, and Tony just shrugged. Said he's looking for girls who need a way out. Told me I'd understand when the restaurant opens. Tony spent the next 2 weeks passing out the flyers. He'd walk for hours each day, sliding them under windshield wipers, taping them on bus stop benches, pinning them to bulletin boards in laundromats and corner stores. He hit the low-income apartments hard, places where the hallways smelled like mildew and the doors were propped open with shoes. He said some people asked questions, but most just took the flyers without a word. One woman got mad and tore it up in front of him, said, "You people need to stop playing games with our daughters." I started noticing the flyers around too. On the stop sign near my building, inside the bathroom stall at the gas station, folded up and tucked into the handrail on the city bus. A couple times I saw girls holding them, teenagers mostly, walking with friends, pointing at the picture and giggling. One of them was no older than 15. When I brought it up to Tony, he said it wasn't his business who called the number. They don't list an age, he said. They just said young. I don't ask questions. He wasn't proud about it, just tired. He said the guy paid him at the end of every day, crisp bills in a white envelope. Never the same parking lot twice. The last time I saw Tony before things changed, he seemed nervous. It was a Tuesday night. We were sitting on his front porch drinking cheap beer, and he kept checking his phone. I asked him what was up, and he said the flyer guy offered him a bonus if he could recruit directly. Said he could make a couple hundred if he brought someone to a meeting. I asked what kind of meeting, and he just looked down and mumbled, "Orientation or something, I guess." I told him it didn't sound right. He laughed it off but didn't look me in the eye. "Look," he said, "I'm not doing anything to anybody. I'm just passing a message. What they do after that ain't my responsibility." I let it go for the night, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. The next morning, I went to the corner store and saw a new stack of flyers pinned to the bulletin board. I took one. This version looked the same, but had a line in small print added at the bottom. "Special interviews being held this week. Limited spaces. Call for location." I watched a girl rip one off the board and stuff it in her backpack. Tony kept working. By the end of the second week, he said he was told to stop distributing and wait for further instructions. The guy hadn't paid him for the last batch yet, and said he'd settle everything after the event. Tony didn't like the sound of that, but figured it meant some big launch party or something. The next day, I was working the late shift when Tony came by the station. He looked worse than usual, sweaty, twitchy, like he hadn't slept. Said he needed to borrow my phone because his wasn't getting a signal. I handed it to him and watched as he dialed the number from the flyer. He waited, but no one picked up. "Guy said he'd call today," he muttered. "Said I'd get the final instructions and the bonus." He paced around the lot for a while before handing me the phone back. Then he asked if I could drive him somewhere the next morning. Didn't say where, just that it was important, and that he didn't want to go alone. I asked what it was, and he just said, "I think I messed up." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the flyers, the vague promises, the girls. I checked the area code. It wasn't from around here. I tried calling the number myself. It rang twice, then disconnected. The first girl to go missing was Maria Santos. She was 19, worked part-time at a laundromat, and lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with her mom and 3 younger siblings. She told her mom one morning that she had a job interview at some restaurant place. She even dressed up for it, curled her hair, wore makeup, something she rarely did. She never came back. Her mom called everyone, even came to the gas station asking if I'd seen her. She looked terrified. A week later, her mom found one of the flyers Tony had been handing out. It was under Maria's mattress. The number was circled in red ink. Then it was Angela V., who lived in the trailer park off Route 87. Then Rosalind Jimenez. Then 2 sisters from the edge of town. 5 girls, all from struggling families, all vanished within a month. Each one had mentioned to someone, parent, friend, sibling, that they were going to check out some kind of job opportunity. Something that paid well. Every single one of them had come across one of those flyers. I told Tony what I heard, and he went quiet. Completely shut down. He stopped answering my calls for a couple days. When I finally saw him again, he looked rough, barely slept, shaking. He told me he had tried calling the number from the flyer a dozen times. It just rang and then disconnected. One time, it went to a weird voicemail in another language. Then nothing. He tried texting it too, but the messages didn't go through. When he realized no one was calling him back, he started putting it together. He kept saying it over and over. It wasn't a job. It wasn't a job. We went through everything he had. Extra flyers, contact notes, the car's license plate he remembered from the guy who hired him. It was all dead ends. The license plate didn't match any state database. The cash he was paid didn't trace anywhere. The phone number was a burner. Tony looked like he was going to fall apart. He kept saying he helped them, He handed them over. One night, he told me he was going back to the place where he first met the guy. It was a run-down office space on the far edge of town, near the dry storage warehouses. He asked me to come, but I said no. He left around midnight, called me the next morning. "There's no one here," he said. "The whole building's empty, like it was never used." He stayed there most of the day, talked to a few neighbors, mostly truck drivers and warehouse staff. One guy told him he'd seen big refrigerated trucks pull into the back lot late at night, always unmarked, always backing straight into the loading dock. Another woman who worked nights nearby said she saw people moving crates wrapped in black plastic, but never saw anyone come in or out during the day. Tony broke into the place. Said he didn't care anymore. He needed to know. Inside was mostly cleared out. A few tables, some broken shelves, the smell of bleach strong enough to sting. He found empty boxes, shrink wrap, even shipping labels with addresses from all over. New York, LA, even a couple from Canada and somewhere in Europe. One label said, "Frozen sample, perishable," and had a string of numbers he couldn't make sense of. In a back closet behind a false wall, he found a laptop. It was dusty, like someone forgot it. It was password protected, but he managed to boot it in safe mode and get around some of the restrictions. He showed me the screen that night. There were folders labeled Inventory Logs, Client Queue, Shipment 7.3, and one just named Recipes. Most were encrypted, but a few files were in plain text. Messages back and forth between someone calling himself Chef and another guy labeled MGR South. They discussed timelines, packaging methods, and something called processing sequence. One message read, "The last 3 profiles were high quality. Ensure refrigeration within 2 hours of cleaning. Customs docs to be swapped en route. Client confirmed wire." Tony's hands shook the whole time he read. The worst part was a folder of images. He only opened one. I saw it over his shoulder. It was a steel table, blood running to a drain, and a plastic tag tied to a bare ankle. The tag read, "Santos M." We both knew what it meant. Tony copied what he could onto a USB and destroyed the laptop. Then he called the FBI. They came, eventually. Sent a pair of agents who took his statement, the USB, the flyers. They asked if he had anything else, and when he said no, they left without promising anything. He never heard from them again. For weeks, nothing happened. Then suddenly, black SUVs showed up in town, unmarked. Word got around they raided that old warehouse, sealed it up, and left. Later, we heard the FBI confirmed DNA traces from at least a dozen different women inside. Some blood, some hair. They found plastic restraints, surgical tools, and industrial coolers with trace organic material. But the operation itself was gone. Packed up and moved days before they arrived. The trucks, the staff, everything. Gone. Tony got a call from an agent saying he might be in danger. Said they intercepted a message that mentioned his name. Someone from the network was looking for the courier. Within a week, they put him in a witness protection program. New name, new city. He vanished. 3 men were arrested months later. Middlemen, drivers, handlers. They pled guilty to trafficking, but claimed they were just following orders. The actual bosses? They were long gone. Mexican passports, fake identities. One of them had once worked as a consultant for a luxury food import company. I packed up and left not long after. Didn't tell anyone. Just one day, I quit the gas station and got on a Greyhound out of state. I didn't even say goodbye to Tony. I figured he wouldn't be able to answer anyway. Now I live far from the border. I work in a hardware store and keep to myself. Some nights I still see those flyers in my dreams, fluttering on empty windshields under the sun. Tony reached out once, through an encrypted email I didn't recognize. The message was short, just said, "Still breathing, still dreaming of them, never forgive me." That was the last I heard.